Chapter 179. Su Zimo and Demoness G were guided by a force and flew before the skeleton. In that short period of time, Su Zimo could clearly feel the bloodline within his body rumbling as though it was about to be drawn out. The other fiend cultivators did not give up. Some of them struggled and begged while others howled hysterically. Some of them raised their weapons and slashed wildly at the skeleton. The skeleton was completely unharmed without any injuries. As long as it opened its mouth and sucked, the flesh of the cultivators opposite it would turn into a pool of blood that flowed into its mouth. The flesh on the skeleton's body became more plentiful and the beating of its heart in its chest became stronger. Before long, it was Su Zimo and Demoness G's turn. The skeleton turned around and faced the two of them. Its eye sockets shone with a bloodthirsty red light in excitement. Demoness G's face was ashen and her eyes were filled with despair. Pust. 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 Right then, Su Zimo took a deep breath and a massive air current surged into his lungs. It was like an anaconda that was devouring the sun and moon, wanting to transform into a dragon and soar into the heavens. The air current was extremely fast and ferocious. When it sliced his throat, there were even traces of blood with a salty stench. Su Zimo's chest puffed up as though he had swallowed a gigantic balloon. It was extremely shocking. Kill! Su Zimo was the first to open his mouth and roared. The air current gushed out and his bloodline rumbled endlessly within his body. Boom! This voice was like a sudden clap of thunder, suddenly exploding in the void. Many fiend cultivators that were further away from Su Zimo frowned and felt a piercing pain in their ears as they went into a daze. Thunderclap kill. It was a thunder art that was mentioned in the Void Thunder Manual. It was extremely powerful and made use of sound to release a burst of power that could cause a huge impact on the opponent. However, the back of the Void Thunder Manual was torn away and there was naturally no way to learn that thunder art. However, Su Zimo had some inspiration from his experiences. Together with his own understanding, he created a powerful sound spirit technique by combining it with the Anaconda Eclipse from the mystic classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness. This was the thunderclap kill that Su Zimo just now displayed. Of course, this kind of thunder technique was not perfect after all. It was just something that Su Zimo had deduced himself. Every time he released it, Su Zimo's lungs would be under tremendous pressure, and he would even be injured. Unless it was absolutely necessary, Su Zimo would not easily use Thunderclap Kill. Of course, if Su Zimo had mastered the marrow cleansing section and started refining his organs, his lungs would be extremely strong and he would be able to withstand the explosion of Thunderclap Kill. At this time, Su Zimo used this move. Naturally, he was prepared to go all out. The power of thunder and lightning was the most masculine, and evil spirits would be repelled. Thunderclap Kill was the same. After hearing that roar, the skeleton shuddered and the flesh that it had just condensed showed signs of dispersing. Immediately after, Su Zimo's eyes flashed with a vicious glint. Suddenly, he extended his right hand and used his palm as a knife, stabbing it viciously into the skeleton's chest. Poof! A flash of blood appeared. Su Zimo's palm had just pierced half an inch into the skeleton's chest when it was stuck. Immediately after, the flesh on Su Zimo's palm began to peel off, turning into blood that surged into the skeleton's body. Caw, caw. The skeleton opened its mouth, as though it was mocking Su Zimo for overestimating himself. In the blink of an eye, the flesh on Su Zimo's palm dissipated completely, revealing a blood-bone palm. Suddenly, the skeleton's body shuddered. An extremely terrifying aura was being emitted from the blood-colored bone palm, spreading to its chest, causing one's heart to tremble. A thin layer of flames burned on the surface of the blood-bone palm, emitting a scorching temperature that seemed like it could incinerate all living beings. Instantly, the flesh on the skeleton's chest melted. Gritting his teeth, Su Zimo jabbed forcefully. Instantly, the blood-bone palm entered the skeleton's chest and spread open its fingers, grabbing the skeleton's beating heart. At that moment, Suzumo and the skeleton shuddered at the same time and froze instantly. The entire world seemed to have frozen. Exclamation point. Suzumo squeezed with his palm and the heart exploded. Arg, arg. Opening its mouth, the skeleton let out a sinister roar from the depths of its throat. A massive energy fluctuation burst forth from the skeleton's chest and repelled Suzumo instantly. Blood filled the air and the stench of blood filled the air. Large patches of blood mist splattered on Suzumo's body, seeping into his body through his pores. In the blink of an eye, Suzumo was bathed in blood and his body expanded. It was as though he was a fiend celestial that had just walked out of hell. It was terrifying. Ah! An extremely powerful bloodline surged into his body and Suzumo felt as though his body was about to explode as he could not help but roar into the skies. The moment he opened his mouth, he spat out a thick and pure blood light that emitted an incomparably domineering bloodline fluctuation. When they saw that, the remaining fiend sect cultivators' eyes burned. Nobody knew what happened to the skeleton or why its chest was pierced by Suzumo and it was severely injured. However, everyone could tell that most of the skeleton's bloodline essence had surged into Suzumo's body. It was a huge opportunity. With such a pure bloodline essence, everyone present would most likely be able to reach the tsunami blood realm. As for Suzumo, who was already at the tsunami blood realm, what realm would he reach in the future after obtaining this opportunity? What sort of changes would his bloodline undergo? Immediately after, the expressions of many fiend sect cultivators changed as they realized that something was amiss. At that moment, Suzumo's body was filled with the immense power of bloodline and he was about to explode. Streaks of blood appeared on the surface of his body in a menacing manner. A look of pity flashed through Pang Yu's eyes. This was indeed a huge opportunity. It was an opportunity so huge that none of the people present could withstand it. In his opinion, Suzumo's outcome was already destined. He would explode from the immense bloodline essence without a corpse remaining. Ah! The skeleton roared deeply and its eye sockets shone with a cold glint as it spat out a series of syllables. I want, all of you, to be buried with me. Rumble. Boom. The ground trembled violently and cracks appeared one after another, spreading rapidly in all directions. The surrounding walls collapsed and countless boulders fell, covering the skies. Everyone from the fiend's sects was shocked and hurriedly sprinted outside. Because their spirit energies were restricted, everyone would only die if they were buried by the countless boulders. None of them could withstand such a ferocious impact. Initially, Demoness G wanted to leave. However, she hesitated when she saw Suzumo's tragic state beside her. No matter what, she was the one who brought Suzumo here. This was an unexpected calamity for Suzumo to begin with. Furthermore, Suzumo had indeed fulfilled his promise and protected her with all his might along the way. If not for Suzumo's counterattack earlier on, she would have ended up like the other fiend sect disciples and become food for the skeleton. She had only hesitated for a moment before she lost her final chance to escape. Chapter 180. Bang! 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 It was as though the apocalypse had arrived and the heavens were collapsing. Boulders fell from all directions, blocking all the passageways. At this moment, Suzumo's body swelled up and he shuddered as he panted heavily. The powerful bloodline essence was rampaging through his body. Suzumo's body was on the verge of falling apart. The pain was unbearable and his consciousness was blurry. Opposite him, the skeleton's appearance was also very ugly. There was a gigantic bloody hole in its chest. The place where its heart was initially was empty, leaving only a few pieces of flesh. Initially, there was still a layer of flesh on the skeleton and it was almost returning to its human form. Now that its heart was shattered, the flesh was dispersing as well, falling off the skeleton and onto the ground. Before long, it turned into a white skeleton once more and its aura was even weaker than before. The skeleton looked at Suzumo's blood-bone palm and the blood light in its eye sockets flickered before dimming gradually. The last traces of life on its body were dissipating slowly. You should die too. The skeleton looked at Suzumo and suddenly opened its mouth to say. Immediately after, it raised its palm and its sharp finger bones were like daggers as it stabbed towards Suzumo's chest. If it struck, there was no need for him to wait to be buried by countless boulders. A Foundation establishment cultivator would definitely die with his heart crushed. When she saw that, Demoness G's expression changed, but she did not try to stop it. No matter what, they would not be able to escape. The only difference was whether they died a moment earlier or a moment later. Although Suzumo's consciousness was blurry, his spirit perception was still present. He felt an intense sense of danger. Instinctively, Suzumo dodged to the side. Suzumo did not have time to react, it was purely out of instinct. Poof! The skeleton's palm was like a sharp saber that pierced Suzumo's chest instantly. The bloody bone palm emerged from Suzumo's back. That palm should have shattered Suzumo's heart. However, because Suzumo dodged, the skeleton's palm pierced through Suzumo's chest and brushed past his heart. That burst seemed to have exhausted the skeleton's last bit of strength. Suzumo's chest was in intense pain as he punched out casually, sending the skeleton flying, and it fell into the rubble. The skeleton's body was motionless, as though it was dead, and the hole in its face was dark. In the blink of an eye, the skeleton was covered in a layer of dust. Shing! An arrow of blood spurted out from Suzumo's chest and splattered all over the ground, emitting a crystalline luster. The aura of his bloodline was rich and sparkling. Suzumo's body had shrunk considerably. Even though he had yet to recover to his original state, the blood scars on his body were fading and were showing signs of healing. That change attracted Demoness G's attention. In reality, just now was the most difficult moment for Suzumo. The bloodline in his body was way too powerful and his body could not withstand it at all. It was equivalent to having a peerlessly powerful force galloping through his body, crashing left and right, with nowhere to vent it. The reason why Suzumo's body expanded was because the pressure in his body was too great. The surface of his body cracked and blood scars appeared. If he could not digest that immense power of bloodline, there was only a single outcome for Suzumo: his body would explode and he would die. However, the skeleton's final attack saved Suzumo's life imperceptibly. Naturally, the skeleton's intention was to kill Suzumo. Unexpectedly, Suzumo relied on his spirit perception and managed to avoid his heart by a hair's breadth. Although his injuries were severe, and the wound on his chest was frightening, and blood was constantly gushing out, the power of the bloodline in his body suddenly found a place to go, and immediately poured out in torrents, thus resolving this crisis. Of course, there was still a large amount of bloodline essence left in Suzumo's body. However, the bloodline essence could no longer threaten his life. It was a blessing in disguise. Too many things had happened that night. If anything had gone wrong in between, Suzumo would not have been able to obtain the fortune before him. Instead, he would have been in deep trouble. It was the same right now. Suzumo were still in danger. Rumble. Boom. The surrounding mountains collapsed and a gigantic shadow descended, burying them before long. The surrounding exits were already blocked. Even if Suzumo was in his peak condition, he might not be able to escape, let alone the fact that his chest was severely injured and he was dizzy and powerless. I'm sorry. There was a rare hint of melancholy in Demoness G's eyes. However, she pretended to be relaxed and smiled at Suzumo. Crack. 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 The ground trembled and cracks appeared one after another, expanding continuously. Suzumo's legs gave way and he almost fell headfirst into the crack. Suzumo shook his head and tried his best to stay awake. Looking down, the crack was pitch black and he could not see the bottom, he did not know what was below. If he was careless and fell headfirst, he might not be able to avoid being smashed into meat paste. All of a sudden, Suzumo's ears twitched and he vaguely caught the sound of flowing water from the depths of the crack. After cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Su Zimo's vision and hearing were far superior to others, and he was almost at the level of seeing the world. Swoosh! Swoosh! The mountains above his head fell and countless boulders came crashing down, bringing with them a billowing dust cloud that obscured one's vision in a terrifying manner. Demoness G had a hopeless expression as she closed her eyes and sighed gently. Right then, Demoness G felt her wrist being grabbed and yanked forcefully. Caught off guard, she stumbled and was brought over. Instinctively, she opened her eyes and looked over. Su Zimo's side profile was pale as he clutched the wound on his chest with one hand and dragged her with the other, stumbling towards the stone coffin not far away. Hurry, go in. When they arrived before the stone coffin, Su Zimo brought Demoness G in front of him and hollered softly, giving her a push. Demoness G froze for a moment and fell into the stone coffin without resisting. Su Zimo followed closely behind and leaped in, grabbing the lid of the coffin beside him and tugging hard. With a loud bang, the lid of the coffin was slammed shut. The last bit of light vanished. It was pitch black within the stone coffin. Bang! 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 Almost at the same time as the lid was slammed shut, the sound of countless boulders smashing against the stone coffin could be heard. It was heavy, powerful and deafening. The space of the stone coffin was not big and was designed for a single person. Now that there were two people in it, coupled with the fact that Su Zimo had quite a bit of bloodline essence in his body and his body was slightly swollen, it was extremely cramped and could not avoid skin contact. A strange feeling arose in Demoness G's heart, but she did not say anything. If it was anyone else or Su Zimo before entering the stone coffin, she might have killed him immediately. But now, she was motionless and blinking her eyes. No one knew what she was thinking. It was imaginable that if Su Zimo was any slower, he would have been smashed to death by the boulders outside just now. Even so, Su Zimo chose to let her in first and bear the danger himself. At that thought, a gentle glint flashed through her eyes as she pursed her red lips. Chapter 181. The ground trembled and the stone coffin shook violently as well. Slowly, it tilted and slid into a pitch-black crack, falling down. A moment later, the stone coffin fell into the water with a plop and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Gigantic rocks rolled and dust filled the air. The skies collapsed and the earth caved in. After an unknown period of time, the tremors finally subsided. The place was already reduced to ruins without any signs of life. In the middle of the ruins, there was a gigantic gap. It was pitch black below and no one knew where it led to. The night was dark and a gentle breeze blew away the dust on the ruins. Not far away from the ruins, 4 figures stood. To be precise, there were 5 of them. One of them was hidden in the night, extremely blurry and difficult to identify. It was the thousand-faced assassin. The 5 fiend heirs looked at the ruins not far away with flickering gazes and lingering fear. When the wind blew, the 5 of them felt a chill on their bodies. It was only then that they realized that their clothes were already drenched in sweat. Hundreds of cultivators from the 7 fiend sects came for this trip. The fiend heirs were all gathered for the sake of the inheritance. It could be said to be a rare clash between the younger generation of the fiend sections. However, none of them expected that the journey of inheritance would turn into a killing fest. Not only did they not obtain the inheritance, it almost turned into a killing fest. Of the hundreds of fiend sect cultivators, only the 5 of them survived. The fiend heir of malevolent earth sect was slain by the unknown green-robed cultivator. Demoness G did not manage to escape either and was buried in the ruins. There was no way she could survive. If not for the fact that the terrain changed too much and the ancient spirit lock formation lost its effect, the 5 of them might not have been able to escape. The 5 of them had conflicted expressions and remained silent. The ruins were created by that terrifying skeleton. However, for some reason, the green-robed cultivator of unknown origins left the deepest impression on everyone. To be fair, If not for the fact that the green-robed cultivator had crushed the skeleton's heart at the final moment, they would have suffered the same outcome and died from having their essence blood sucked dry by the skeleton. Who was that person? A long time later, Peng Yu suddenly asked. Shen Guanyu shook his head. He should be someone from the immortal sections. There are only a few immortal sects that specialize in melee combat. That person's bloodline contains the power of thunder. I'm guessing that he's a legacy disciple of Zephyr Thunder Palace. What a pity. Peng Yu smacked his lips as a look of pity flashed through his eyes. Not only was Peng Yu not discouraged by his defeat at the hands of Su Zimo, but his fighting spirit was even stronger. His strength was far stronger than Su Zimo's. Su Zimo's consecutive killing moves did not manage to truly injure Peng Yu's tendons, bones and essence chi. It was clear how strong and terrifying his physique was. The reason he was defeated was that he had underestimated his opponent, allowing Su Zimo to seize the initiative and suppress him until the end, making it difficult for him to make a comeback. Peng Yu believed that he would definitely not lose if the two of them fought again. Now that Su Zimo was dead, Peng Yu could not help but sigh because he had lost the chance to defeat the latter. In reality, Peng Yu was not the only one. The other 4 demon heirs were also fuming. After all, there was an ancient spirit restriction array here, and everyone's spirit energy was restricted, so they couldn't use their strength at all. In the eyes of the crowd, the malevolent Earth sect heir had died an unjust death. It's a pity that he's dead. Otherwise, we would definitely be able to meet him in the ancient battlefield in the future. At that time, we'll let him witness the methods of Cloud Rain sect. Shen Guanyu harumphed softly. What's the point of saying all that? The illusion fiend cult heir flicked his sleeves and left, saying coldly, I'm leaving. See you in the ancient battlefield. The 1,000-faced assassin flashed and vanished from the spot. In the blink of an eye, the 5 demon heirs left one after another and peace returned to the ruins. Before long, a voluptuous figure with seductive curves descended on the ruins. She was beautiful and exuded a mature aura, as though she could evoke the most primitive desires in the depths of one's heart. That woman was the chief steward of Sky Treasure Auction House, Gu Shi. What exactly happened? Gu Shi's expression was grave as she softly muttered. Swoosh. Gu Shi stood above the ruins in midair and a terrifying energy fluctuation burst forth from her glabella. She released her massive spirit consciousness and searched the ruins carefully, not wanting to miss a single trace. Nothing. Frowning, Gu Shi looked at the bottomless ravine beneath her and hesitated for a moment before descending. Before long, Gu Shi arrived above a river. Gu Shi searched the surroundings once more but to no avail. Her gaze landed on the river not far away. Releasing her spirit consciousness once more, Gu Shi sent it into the depths of the river to investigate. A moment later, Gu Shi's expression changed and she retracted her spirit consciousness. At the bottom of the river, she saw a pitch-black shadow flowing into the distance. If she was not wrong, that should be the undercurrent of the river. The undercurrent at the bottom of the river was extremely powerful, and the current was very fast. Anything that fell into the undercurrent would be taken away, and no one knew where it would be taken to. It would naturally stop there once it escaped from the undercurrent of the river. Yen, where are you? The beautiful figure vanished, leaving behind a soft sigh. Not long after Gu Shi left, deep within the rubble beside the river, the pitch-black eye sockets of a skeleton shone with a sinister sanguine light. Although Su Zimo and Demoness Ji were hiding in the stone coffins, the moment the coffins fell into the river, the two of them received quite a bit of impact. Ugh! Ah! Su Zimo grunted and Demoness Ji cried out in pain. The two voices sounded in the cramped stone coffin in a rather strange manner. Su Zimo felt a sharp pain in his chest. The sudden impact caused his tendons and bones to crack and he gasped as though he was about to fall apart. Previously, Demoness Ji's arm was cut by Shen Guanyu and it was considered a light injury. Initially, it was no longer bleeding after bandaging. However, the impact caused the wound to rupture once more and she frowned in pain. Although they were separated by the thick stone coffin, she could still sense the flow of the river outside. She heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what, they managed to escape. As long as they waited for the stone coffin to sink to the bottom of the river, the two of them would be able to break out. All of a sudden. Suddenly, the stone coffin was pulled by an external force and instead of sinking, it rolled forward. The change was extremely sudden and the two people in the stone coffin were caught off guard as they collided. Both of them were flustered and retreated instinctively. However, they did not have much space in the cramped stone coffin. After this incident, the atmosphere in the sarcophagus suddenly became a little strange. The temperature seemed to be rising, and it was a little hot. In the darkness, the two of them panted slightly and faced each other without speaking. Su Zimo turned his head and turned slightly. He had yet to absorb the bloodline essence in his body and his body was still slightly swollen. That movement was fine but he accidentally bumped into Demoness G again. Sensing a smooth tenderness, Su Zimo stopped moving hurriedly and froze on the spot motionlessly. Chapter 182. If the stone coffin did not sink to the bottom but was brought away by an external force, there was only a single possibility: it had encountered an undercurrent at the bottom of the river. There was nothing the two of them could do in the undercurrent. Even if they were to leave the stone coffin now, they would not be able to escape from the undercurrent. Furthermore, both of them were injured. Right now, they could only resign themselves to fate and wait for the stone coffin to escape from the undercurrent on its own before leaving the coffin. Realizing that there was no danger, Demoness G was slightly relieved. Glancing sideways at Su Zimo who was lying beside her, she rolled her eyes and smirked with a mischievous glint. "Hey, you did that on purpose, didn't you?" Suddenly, she asked. Su Zimo closed his eyes, feeling a little guilty and did not say anything. After all, just now that the two of them had bumped into each other, it was inevitable that their skin would touch. To think that you're no different from others despite your refined features. You're a pervert. To think that you claim to be someone of the orthodox path. Aren't you afraid of being embarrassed? The two of them were too close and Demoness G's body emitted a faint fragrance that smelled like orchids. When Su Zimo heard her reproachful tone and felt the warmth beside his ears, he could not help but feel restless and could not control himself. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he bit his tongue gently, trying his best to stay awake. Through the signs of Wu Xiangming, Yan Fei, and the others, Su Zimo had already vaguely guessed what the pure maiden sect of the fiend sects specialized in. It's no wonder why the fiend sects call her a demoness. Su Zimo exclaimed in his heart. Even though he was prepared, he was nearly bewitched by her. Demoness G's every frown, smile, actions and emotions would cause one to be attracted to her unknowingly. If one was careless, they would fall deeply into her charms and be unable to extricate themselves. When she saw Su Zimo keep his eyes closed without replying, she could not help but smile and ask gently, "Hey, let me ask you. Why didn't you hide in first earlier on? Why did you let me in first?" Suddenly, Su Zimo opened his eyes and replied coldly, "I was afraid that you would be smashed to death because you're too stupid." Ah. Demoness G almost choked on Su Zimo's words and gritted her teeth subconsciously. However, on second thought, the situation back then was way too dangerous. If she had been left behind, she would definitely not have been as decisive as Su Zimo. There was an 80 to 90% chance that he would be crushed to death by the boulders outside, just as Su Zimo had said. Even so, she was still a little angry. He was inexplicably angry. Biting her red lips, she suddenly reached out and pinched Su Zimo, scolding, "Go over there and stay away from me." Even if Demoness G did not mention it, Su Zimo wanted to stay as far away from her as possible. However, this stone coffin was extremely small, so there was no extra space. Right now, the best solution was to refine the bloodline essence in his body and allow his body to return to normal. This way, he would have more space. If nothing went wrong, Su Zimo's marrow cleansing section would definitely reach greater mastery after refining the bloodline essence. Taking a deep breath of air, Su Zimo channeled the tiger leopard thunder sound mental cultivation technique slowly and began breathing in and out in the stone coffin. Huff. Boom. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from Su Zimo's body. It became clearer and sounded like a tiger leopard or thunder. Along with the sound, Su Zimo's bloodline began to circulate. The endless bloodline essence was refined and fused into Su Zimo's bloodline. Demoness Ji watched silently from the side without saying anything. Naturally, she could guess that Su Zimo was channeling an extremely powerful marrow cleansing blood swap technique. The reason why this handsome man possessed such terrifying strength was because of this marrow cleansing blood swap technique. She listened carefully at the side and blinked, intending to learn this secret skill in secret. However, that thought was way too naive. Su Zimo's marrow cleansing blood swap technique was a fusion of two top marrow cleansing techniques, the one and only tiger leopard thunder sound in Tianhuang mainland. Notwithstanding the tiger leopard thunder sound, how much time and effort did Su Zimo spend just to comprehend the sound of the tiger leopard? Demoness Ji did not even have a mental cultivation technique and wanted to comprehend this secret skill through the sound in Su Zimo's body. That was truly wishful thinking. After a day and night, Demoness Ji finally gave up after repeated attempts to no avail. Demoness Ji pouted and sulked. The tiger leopard thunder sound was indeed powerful. In just a day and night, Su Zimo's body had shrunk significantly and would return to normal before long. However, what surprised Demoness Ji the most was that the wound on Su Zimo's chest had already healed and was starting to scab. What powerful regeneration capabilities! Demoness Ji was secretly shocked. That wound had already penetrated Su Zimo's body. Even body-tempered warriors might not be able to recover fully without half a month's time. However, Su Zimo merely spent a day and night to heal all the wounds on his body. At that moment, the wound on Demoness Ji's arm had only just healed and stopped bleeding. It would take a few more days for it to scab. What sort of a monster is that? Demoness Ji looked at Su Zimo's side profile in a daze. After the marrow cleansing blood swap, Su Zimo's skin turned even fairer and brighter, as tender as a newborn baby and sparkling like jade. No wonder sister can't forget about him. I'm looking at him in a different light. That lad is indeed quite capable. Pausing for a moment, Demoness Ji thought again, he's quite capable to be able to teach lunatic Pang a lesson. After enduring for so long, Demoness Ji was tired as well. Looking at Su Zimo who was cultivating at the side, her eyelids gradually grew heavy and she fell into a deep sleep. After an unknown period of time, Demoness Ji jolted awake from her dream. With a bang, she bounced up and slammed heavily against the coffin lid. Ouch! Demoness Ji rubbed her forehead and cried out in pain. With that, she was completely awake and finally recalled where she was. Instinctively, she looked to her side. Su Zimo's figure had already returned to normal as he raised his head and looked at the coffin lid with his eyes wide open. Demoness Ji checked her body hurriedly and heaved a sigh of relief after confirming that there was nothing amiss. As the pure maiden of the fiend's sects, she should not have made such a low-level mistake, to think that she would fall asleep with a man beside her. If the fiend heir of Cloud Rain sect, Shengguanyu, was the one lying beside her, the consequences would be dire. That was close. Demoness Ji stuck out her tongue gently and glanced at Su Zimo instinctively. This time round, she discovered something unusual about Su Zimo. Initially, she thought that Su Zimo was in a daze with his eyes wide open. Now that she looked at him again, Su Zimo seemed to have seen something and was studying it carefully in a daze. Following Su Zimo's gaze, Demoness Ji raised her head and looked at the coffin lid as well. When she took a look, she realized that something was amiss and could not help but widen her eyes. There were words on the coffin lid. The handwriting was a little messy, as though it was carved with something sharp. Previously, Su Zimo and Demoness G were trapped in the stone coffin with an ambiguous atmosphere. Coupled with the darkness in the coffin, neither of them noticed the coffin lid. But now, they could vaguely make out the words on the coffin lid by focusing their attention. The first line was written with 4 words, Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Chapter 183. When she saw those words, Demoness G's heart skipped a beat and she continued reading hurriedly. Gradually, her eyes widened and she was engrossed as well. Although the stone coffin was pitch black, Su Zimo's eyesight was extremely strong after cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Everything he looked at was as clear as day. This was a cultivation technique related to bloodlines. It recorded many strange and bizarre spirit techniques, describing the secrets and mysteries of bloodlines. It could be used to stimulate and utilize the power of bloodlines. The angle was so novel that it was simply unheard of. For example, the spirit art that the skeleton used to devour many fiend sect cultivators was recorded in the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and was known as the Blood Devouring Art. Although most of the spirit arts in the Fiend Sutra were extremely evil, there were a few that piqued Su Zimo's interest. He memorized them and tried to figure them out. His trip with Demoness G this time round was daunting but not dangerous. Furthermore, it was a blessing in disguise. Now that Su Zimo was at greater mastery of the marrow cleansing section, his bloodline flowed quietly within his body, nurturing a massive amount of power. It shone with a crystalline luster that made his blood vessels almost transparent. From this day forth, Su Zimo would be able to cultivate the organs refinement section. However, the organs refinement section was even harder to cultivate than the marrow cleansing section. The marrow cleansing section even mentioned the sound of tigers and leopards. However, there was no mention of demon beasts in the organs refinement section, only mysterious and complicated sutras. Su Zimo still had no idea how to cultivate the organs refinement section. After an unknown period of time, the stone coffin began to shake violently. Once again, the stone coffin was pushed out by an external force. Gradually, it calmed down and sank. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he realized that the stone coffin had already escaped from the undercurrent of the river. Demoness G at the side could no longer hold it in. Wearing her veil once more, she channeled her spirit energy and slammed her palm against the coffin lid. With a bang, the coffin lid was sent flying and endless river water gushed into the stone coffin. Instantly, Su Zimo was drenched. On the other hand, Demoness G was already prepared. She used her spirit energy to condense an almost transparent barrier around her body, blocking the river water outside. When she turned back and saw Su Zimo's wretched state, she could not help but chuckle. Su Zimo floated in the river. His expression was a little sluggish, as if he had yet to recover from the shock. In reality, it wasn't that Su Zimo's reaction wasn't fast enough. Instead, after the river water flowed into the stone coffin, Su Zimo caught a glimpse of a longan-sized Buddhist prayer bead floating out of the stone coffin from the corner of his eye. These Buddhist beads were extremely ancient. Although they were made of wood, they did not show any signs of decay. There was a palm engraved on the Buddhist beads. The fingers and thumbs were interlocked, forming a hand seal. Every line on the palm was clearly visible, dazzling anyone who saw it. Su Zimo only glanced at the Buddhist beads and felt his vision blur. He saw an extremely shocking scene. It was a battlefield that resembled purgatory. Corpses were piled into mountains and blood flowed like rivers in all directions. The stench of blood filled the air and black clouds pressed down. The atmosphere was stifling and suffocating. A sinister wind blew in the surroundings and the chill was bone-chilling. Above the mountain of corpses and blood stood a person covered in blood. Facing Su Zimo, he was smiling with his head lowered like a matchless fiend. That laughter was sinister and terrifying, as though it was right beside Su Zimo's ears, sending chills down his spine. A moment later, specks of golden light seeped through the gaps in the black clouds and scattered onto the battlefield, bringing some warmth. As time passed by, the golden light increased in number and intensity, almost tearing the pitch-black clouds into shreds. All of a sudden, a bedazzling golden pillar of light descended from the skies, seemingly piercing through the firmaments and landing on the fiend. Roar! Enraged, the fiend suddenly raised his head and roared towards the skies. The veins on his neck popped and protruded in a menacing manner, resembling a malevolent ghost from hell. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening bang, a palm that shone with a bedazzling golden light descended from the skies. His middle finger and thumb interlocked, forming a hand seal that pressed down slowly. Fiend suppression seal. A deep and resounding voice sounded. Before the golden hand seal descended on the fiend's head, the fiend seemed to be unable to withstand the pressure and exploded, spewing out a blood mist in a shocking manner. Blood splattered everywhere and Su Zimo felt a piercing pain in his eyes as he woke up from the illusion. Although the entire process seemed slow, it happened in the blink of an eye. Su Zimo shuddered as he looked at the Buddha beads that were gradually sinking to the bottom of the lake not far away. A look of struggle flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. After hesitating for a moment, he broke through the water and caught up to the sinking Buddha beads, grabbing them in his palm. Nothing happened after he obtained the Buddha beads. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like as long as he did not look at the patterns on the Buddha beads carefully, he would not fall into the illusion just now. Fiend suppression seal. Those 3 words flashed through Su Zimo's mind. Needless to say, that was an extremely powerful secret skill. Although he had only fallen into the illusion for a brief moment, that golden hand seal left an extremely deep impression on Su Zimo and could not be erased from his mind. Su Zimo pushed against the water and swam towards the surface of the river. Before long, he broke out of the water and arrived at the shore. At that moment, Su Zimo's upper body was bare and his lower body was drenched. She pursed her lips and swept her gaze across Su Zimo's lower body. Just as she was about to tease him, Su Zimo shuddered and channeled his bloodline. Under the power of bloodline, a white mist appeared from Su Zimo's body. All the water droplets had evaporated. Beneath the veil, Demoness G's mouth was agape. Su Zimo withdrew a clean set of green robes from his storage bag and wore it again, tossing the Buddha beads in his palm in. Demoness G's gaze shifted as she recalled Su Zimo's abnormality at the bottom of the river. She leaned over and blinked. What did you discover down there? Nothing, naturally. Su Zimo would not tell her about the Buddha beads and merely replied indifferently. Petty. Demoness G harumphed. Retrieving a flying sword, Su Zimo leaped into the air and looked around. After being teleported by the undercurrent of the river, he did not know where he was. Demoness G arrived in midair and looked around as well. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo turned back to look at the river behind him. His heart skipped a beat as he vaguely guessed his location. The river was called the Yongxing River and was a tributary of the Jishui River that originated from the Great Zhou dynasty. It flowed through Yan country. In other words, Su Zimo had already arrived in Yan country. Su Zimo gazed in the direction of the capital of Yan country with a longing gaze. I've been away from home for 2 years. I wonder how my brother is doing. It felt like yesterday when he thought about how he left Pingyang town 2 years ago. Su Zimo did not have many relatives. Apart from him, the only bloodline left in the Su family were Su Hong and Su Xiaoning. Su Xiaoning was far away in Azure Frost sect and was not easy to meet. Su Zimo intended to visit his brother in the capital of Yan country. Chapter 184. Su Zimo roughly identified it and rode on his flying sword, speeding in the direction of the capital of Yan country. When Demoness Ji saw that Su Zimo ignored her and turned to leave, she could not help but feel a little angry. Stomping her feet, she chased after him on her flying sword as well. As the pure maiden of the fiend's sects, her status was unimaginably noble. It was far from what a Misty Peak disciple like Su Zimo could compare to. Furthermore, she was born with a seductive nature. After cultivating the Pure Maiden Sect's Supreme Secret Sutra, the Pure Maiden Heart Sutra, her every frown, smile and action would exude a charm that could bewitch all living beings. Even cultivators who were a major cultivation realm higher than her could easily fall under her skirt if they were not careful. Any cultivator who saw Demoness G would be affected by the power of the Pure Maiden Heart Sutra as long as they had the slightest bit of lust in their hearts. The entire process happened subtly and was difficult to detect, causing them to fall deeper and deeper. That was the terror of the Pure Maiden Heart Sutra. Even a single thought would not work. They would be controlled by the Pure Maiden of the Fiend sects. What made Demoness G indignant was that Su Zimo did not have any thoughts about her right from the beginning. Furthermore, he was extremely wary of her. It was even more so after he found out about her identity, wanting nothing more than to distance himself from her and never meet her again. That caused Demoness G to doubt her own charm. Or was there something wrong with the Pure Maiden Heart Sutra? The two of them sped in midair one after another. Just like that, they traveled for half a day. Su Zimo stopped his flying sword and turned to look at Demoness G behind him, frowning slightly. Demoness G stopped as well and ignored Su Zimo's gaze. With her hands behind her back, she pretended to look at the scenery nonchalantly with a relaxed expression. Su Zimo turned to leave and Demoness G followed behind. When Su Zimo changed his direction and route, Demoness G did the same. Su Zimo stopped and turned around, asking in a deep voice, "Why are you following me?" TSK, Demoness G rolled her eyes and pouted. "How strange. You're going your way and I'm going mine. Who's following you?" "Don't flatter yourself, okay?" Su Zimo nodded and asked, "Sure, where are you going?" Demoness G was speechless. Rolling her eyes, she choked out, "Why do you care where I go? The world is huge, where can I go?" After all, this woman was Ji Yaoshua's younger sister. Su Zimo couldn't do anything to her. Furthermore, back in the underground inheritance ground, Demoness G had the chance to escape but did not abandon him. This proved that even though she was from the Fiend sects, she was not too bad of a person. Su Zimo turned and left again. Demoness G hurriedly followed after him. A moment later, she suddenly asked, "Hey, you seem to hate me?" "I don't have a good impression of people from the demon sect," Su Zimo said. "Ha!" Demoness G smiled with a mocking look in her eyes as she shook her head. "Initially, I thought that you were different from others. To think that you're a fool as well." "Oh." Su Zimo raised his brow. "Lass, you're young and led astray. How can you be so reasonable? Does your sister know about this?" "What do you mean by led astray?" Suddenly, Demoness G was a little agitated as she stood in front of Su Zimo and looked into his eyes. "Since you don't have a good impression of people from the demon sect, let me ask you, is the fiend path the wrong path? Do you know what a fiend is? Do you know anything about the demon sect?" Su Zimo was stunned for a moment. He wanted to reply but did not know what to say. Indeed, it was difficult for him to define fiends and he did not know anything about them. In fact, before meeting Demoness G, he had not even heard of the 7 fiend sections. A moment later, Su Zimo said, "Indeed, I don't know what a fiend is. However, I know that Wu Xiangming, Yan Fei, and the other 4 truly wanted to protect you. However, you caused their deaths." Demoness G sneered, "You're really wrong. Yan Fei was from the Cloud Rain sect of the Fiend sects and he had ill intentions for following me. As for Wu Xiangming and the other 3, I can tell you clearly that I lured them there because they had ill intentions towards me. People like them deserve to die. If I didn't have the means to protect myself, what do you think they would have done to me?" Su Zimo pondered for a moment before continuing, "I've once encountered a sect called Joyful Sect here. Their disciples are evil and would often rape women, using their yin to replenish their yang to raise their cultivation. If that's not a fiend, what is it? In my opinion, Joyful Sect is no different from the Cloud Rain sect of the Fiend sections." "You're wrong again. Demoness G shook her head in disdain. What joyful sect? I've never heard of it. Although I'm not a disciple of Cloud Rain sect, I know that joyful sect isn't even fit to carry Cloud Rain sect's shoes. Pausing for a moment, she asked again, also, do you know anything about Cloud Rain sect? What makes you think that joyful sect is no different from Cloud Rain sect? Their cultivation techniques. You've seen joyful sect's cultivation techniques. Do you know Cloud Rain sect's cultivation techniques? Su Zimo remained silent. Demoness G continued, let me tell you, although the disciples of Cloud Rain sect often engage in sexual intercourse with women, they will never force any woman. Otherwise, they will definitely be punished by Cloud Rain sect or even executed by the sect. Furthermore, the rights between men and women are the natural Tao of yin and yang, the intersection of heaven and earth. What's wrong with that? If that's considered a fiend, wouldn't all couples in the world be fiends? When he heard that, Su Zimo frowned. In that case, there was truly a fundamental difference between Cloud Rain sect and Joyful sect. Cloud Rain sect would not force people against their will. If the woman was willing, there was naturally nothing much to say. Also, the only true fiend sects are the 7 or even the 6 fiend sections. Even Earth Malevolent sect isn't considered a true fiend sect. Let alone a messy little sect like Joyful sect. Are they even fit to be called fiends? Demoness G continued, since you don't know what a fiend is, let me tell you. There's naturally a reason why the fiend Tao can stand on par with the immortal and Buddhist Taoists and pass down through the ages. The fiend Tao is the Tao of bigotry and extremes. The Tao of bigotry and extremes, Su Zimo repeated and frowned in deep thought. His conversation with Demoness G had truly given Su Zimo a new understanding of fiends. The fiend that Demoness G spoke of was far from the image he had in mind. Furthermore, everyone would more or less have an obsession in their hearts. As long as they took half a step forward and reached the level of bigotry, they would turn into fiends. Bigotry was a fiend. Su Zimo asked, since it's the Tao of bigotry and extremes, what Tao does Cloud Rain sect cultivate? The Tao of carnal indulgence. Demoness G said slowly, carnal indulgence is the foundation of the Cloud Rain Heart Sutra. However, there are 2 taboos. First, one is not to force others. Second, one is not to be emotional. The reason why Yen Fei died in my hands was because he violated the 2 taboos of the Cloud Rain Heart Sutra and revealed a fatal flaw. Naturally, it wasn't strange for him to die in defeat. Since they were to indulge in carnal desires, they had to be heartless. That was the bigotry and extremes of the fiends sections. One had to give up many things to embark on this path. Fiends were incomplete and imperfect. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. After a slight pause, he asked again, what Tao does Pure Maiden sect cultivate? I'm not telling you. Demoness G smiled slyly. Chapter 185. After Demoness G said that, Su Zimo had a new impression of her and the fiend sections. Similar to immortals and Buddhas, fiends had their own Tao as well. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo suddenly recalled something and asked, a few months ago, I met a cultivator in a spirit mine. His methods were cruel and he once massacred an entire city of living beings without sparing a single fowl or dog. That person's cultivation technique is evil and can drain a living person into a dried corpse. Isn't he someone from the fiend sects? Based on what I know, there's no such cultivation technique in the fiend sects. Demoness G shook her head. Pausing for a moment, she continued, the reason why the fiend sects have a bad reputation in the cultivation world is because of you righteous sects who slander them for no reason. You guys want to push all the blame on the fiend sects for anything inhumane. How despicable. Since it's not done by the fiend sects, you guys can come out and explain. Su Zimo frowned. Foo-foo. Demoness G sneered, there's no way the fiend sects will explain. Fiends have the pride of fiends. She thought for a moment and continued, a senior from the fiend's sex once gave an example to describe the difference between immortals and fiends. I think it's rather apartment, it's also a treasure. When someone from the fiend's sex saw it, they snatched it over openly. When someone from the immortal sex saw it, they snatched it over secretly and framed it as the doing of someone from the fiend's sections. That's a little extreme, Su Zimo shook his head. I'm not going to argue with you anymore. With that said, Su Zimo turned and left. Demoness Ji followed behind once more. However, this time round, Su Zimo did not chase her away. Where are you going? She asked. After a moment of silence, Su Zimo replied, home to take a look. Just as Su Zimo was speeding towards the capital of Yen country, more than 10 cultivators arrived at a small town at the borders of Yen country. The two people in the lead were a man and a woman. The man was dressed in a long white robe. He was spotless and had a smile on his face. He was handsome and elegant. The woman was dressed in a jade green long dress. Her jet black hair fluttered in the wind. She looked gentle and quiet, and her appearance was beautiful. The two of them flew on their swords, their clothes fluttering in the wind. They were like a pair of golden boy and jade girl, dazzling and eye-catching. More importantly, the man and woman leading the group were both at the foundation establishment stage. The dozen or so cultivators following behind the two were also building foundation stage cultivators, but their cultivation levels varied. Some were early building foundation stage while others were late building foundation stage. On the waists of these cultivators hung a token with the words Emerald Dawn written on it. It was currently daytime and many commoners were walking on the streets. When they suddenly saw the dozen or so foundation establishment cultivators standing in the air, their expressions changed greatly. The commoners hurriedly knelt on the ground and shouted, "Greetings, Immortal." Someone with sharp eyes in the crowd recognized the gentle woman's identity and whispered, "She looks like the girl from the Shin family." It's really that girl. If you didn't tell me, I wouldn't have dared to admit it. For years have passed and she's changed so much. She's like a fairy. Shoo. Hush. Don't just stare. She's an immortal now. If she gets angry, she'll dig out your eyeballs. The gentle woman in the jade green dress was Shen Mengqi, who was brought away by a perfected being Tsang Lang to join Iridescent Cloud's palace 4 years ago. The white-robed cultivator beside her was her senior brother, Su Yu. Junior sister, so this is your home? Su Yu looked at Shen Mengqi with a gentle gaze and asked softly. Yes. Shen Mengqi seemed to be distracted as she replied. Looking at the town beneath her, she was emotional and her eyes were dazed, revealing a look of reminiscence. Unknowingly, 4 years had passed. 4 years ago, she stood in midair with perfected being Tsang Lang. The scene in Pingyang town was similar and seemed familiar. However, that afternoon, on that familiar long street, there was a stubborn and prideful young man who stood with his chest puffed out. He did not bend his knees or show any fear. At the thought of that young man, Shen Mengqi's lips curled into a smile. In the blink of an eye, Shen Mengqi sighed gently and shook her head. No matter what, immortals and mortals were not on the same level as that young man. A few decades later, she was still young and in her prime. However, that young man was already in his later years and was old. Even if the two of them had unforgettable memories, they could only fade and disappear with the passage of time. Junior sister, junior sister. Su Yu's voice pulled Shen Mengqi back from her memories. Ah, I'm sorry, Shen Mengqi replied indifferently with an apologetic expression. Among the inner sect disciples of Iridescent Cloud's palace, Su Yu was considered as one of the top 10 experts. He had been wooing her for a long time but she had never agreed to it. This time round, she wanted to return home to take a look. Su Yu volunteered himself and followed along with more than 10 junior brothers and sisters. Before long, Shen Mengqi and the others arrived at the Shen residence. Shen Mengqi only had one relative, her brother, Shen Nan. The Shen family had changed quite a bit. Although the Zhao and Li families were destroyed and removed from Pingyang town, Shennan had benefited from the two families back then and had already expanded into a luxurious residence. Back then, because of Su Xiaoning's kidnapping, Su Zimo went on a killing spree and killed many people. However, he did not touch Shennan. Even so, Shennan did not dare to continue being impudent. After all, Su Hong's conferment as king happened in Pingyang town. Although no one knew the inside story, everyone witnessed the scene. Xiaoqi. When Shennan caught sight of Shen Mengqi, he froze on the spot with a look of disbelief in his eyes. "Brother, it's me," Shen Mengqi smiled and nodded. "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." Against more than 10 Foundation establishment cultivators of Iridescent Cloud's palace, Shennan felt fearful and fearful. He smiled with an uneasy expression. Shennan could sense an unfamiliar aura from Shen Mengqi. It was as though after Shen Mengqi joined the immortal sects, the bloodline connection between the two of them had faded. The family has changed quite a bit. Shen Mengqi walked around the Shen residence casually with a smile. Shennan followed behind but did not dare to head forward. After walking around, Shen Mengqi asked in a seemingly casual manner, "Brother, are the 4 major families of Pingyang town still around? The Su family and the others?" "Ah." Shennan froze for a moment and shook his head with a strange expression. "And no, they're not around anymore. The Su family is no longer around." Shen Mengqi stopped in her tracks and suddenly turned around, asking with a frown. "Yes, they're all gone." Shennan nodded and recounted the events that had happened 4 years ago. Shen Mengqi listened carefully. Su Zimo must have taken a certain expert of the pugilistic world as his master and his strength improved by leaps and bounds. The Zhao and Li families were almost destroyed by him single-handedly. Shennan looked at Shen Mengqi again and said, "However, he did not kill me. I reckon that he did it on account of you." Shen Mengqi did not say anything. She knew very well that although the reason why Su Zimo did not kill Shennan was related to her, it was definitely not because of her. "Junior sister, who is this Su Zimo? Where is he now?" At the side, Su could vaguely tell that Su Zimo seemed to have a close relationship with Shen Mengqi in the past. He was already impatient and asked with a frown. Chapter 186. Sensing the hint of impatience in Su Yu's tone, Shen Mengqi replied indifferently, "He's just a childhood playmate and an old friend. He doesn't have a spirit root and can't cultivate. He's different from us. There's no need to bother about him. So, he's just a mortal." I was wondering who he was. Su Yu raised his brows and said coldly, "This Su Zimo clearly knows that you've joined Iridescent Cloud's palace and become a cultivator. Yet, he still dares to bully your brother." Shen Mengqi shook her head. "Forget it, it's all in the past. Furthermore, he might not be blamed for this." Although Shennan seemed to be innocent in his narration and Su Zimo was the one who had been bullying him, Shen Mengqi knew her brother's character very well. Furthermore, when she saw Shennan's evasive gaze, she knew that there was more to this. "How can this do?" Su Yu said in a low voice, "This Su Zimo doesn't know his place and dares to be so impudent as a mortal. Since we've met, we have to teach him an unforgettable lesson." Initially, Su Yu did not intend to interfere in this matter. However, he could vaguely sense that Shen Mengqi seemed to be protecting Su Zimo. The more that was the case, the more Su Yu wanted to interfere and meet this person. Su Yu looked at Shennan and asked coldly, "Young Master Shen, where is this person now?" Initially, Shennan did not intend to do anything. However, when he heard Su Yu's words, his mind could not help but become active and he gradually became more confident. Shennan stammered, "He left Pingyang town 2 years ago and we don't know where he went." Su Yu frowned. The Great Zhou dynasty was vast and there were dozens of vassal states of various sizes. Trying to find a person was no different from finding a needle in a haystack. Shennan coughed gently and continued, however, this person has an elder brother named Su Hong. He's the current king of Yen and has a high status. We can't afford to offend him, humph. Su Yu sneered. The king of mortals is merely a mortal after all. He's only on par with the Qi refinement warriors of the small sections. When he sees the foundation establishment cultivators of iridescent clouds palace, even if he's the king of Yen, he'll have to kneel before me. Shen Nan's blood boiled and his eyes lit up. Shen Nan seemed to see the high and mighty Prince Yen kneeling by his feet obediently, not daring to raise his head. What kind of scene was that? Su Yu said proudly, that's great. Junior sister, since this Su Zimo bullied your brother, let's go to the capital of Yen country and teach his brother a lesson. Ha, this is called an eye for an eye. Chen Mengqi frowned and hesitated. Junior sister, even if it's not for this matter, we still have to make a trip to the Yen kingdom. Su Yu said, junior brother Zhou has been missing for 2 years without any news. Master asked us to investigate. The place with the most cultivators in the Yen kingdom and the place with the most information is the capital of the Yen kingdom. Okay. Chen Mengqi nodded. Su Yu took out a spirit boat from his storage bag and injected spirit qi into it. It expanded against the wind and floated in midair. Su Yu smiled and said, young Master Shen, you should come up too. The day you meet King Yen will be the day you can hold your head high. Shen Nan nodded hurriedly, trembling in excitement and unable to conceal the excitement in his eyes. More than 10 iridescent clouds palace cultivators boarded the spirit boat one after another. Under Su Yu's control, it rose into the air rapidly, turning into a stream of light that sped in the direction of the capital of Yen country. After a few days of traveling at full speed, Su Zimo and Demoness Ji finally arrived at the capital of Yen country. 2 years ago, Su Zimo was here. In the main hall, in front of everyone, he beheaded the king of Yen, Zhao Qian, with a single slash and tied it to his waist. Thereafter, he fought his way out of the encirclement in a heroic manner. That scene seemed to have happened yesterday. After a slight pause, Su Zimo rode on his sword and sped towards the palace. Before long, he arrived above the palace. Who's there? A holler sounded from below. Right after, 2 Qi refinement warriors summoned their flying swords and soared into the air, arriving opposite Su Zimo and Demoness Ji. Both of them were Qi refinement warriors, one was at level 6 Qi condensation while the other was at level 7. Using their spirit-peering art, the two of them scanned Su Zimo and Demoness Ji. They could not help but shudder and their expressions changed. Right now, Su Zimo's cultivation realm was at the peak of early-stage foundation establishment and was much higher than the two of them. Demoness Ji stood there with a veil over her face, the two of them could not detect her at all. Greetings, seniors. The 2 Qi refinement warriors reacted quickly and bowed hurriedly. One of the Qi refinement warriors asked cautiously, I wonder what the 2 seniors have come to the palace for. Bring me to see the king of Yen. Su Zimo had a friendly expression as he said with a smile. The two of them exchanged glances and did not agree immediately. After all, they did not know the identity of the green-robed cultivator before them, how would they dare to bring him in rashly? However, the man and woman before them had deep cultivation realms and they would not be able to stop them if they wanted to barge in. Right then, a sword beam sped over from not far away. When the person came closer and caught sight of Su Zimo, his eyes lit up and he said happily, Second young Master Su. Mr. Song, it's been 2 years. How have you been? Su Zimo smiled and nodded. The person who came later was none other than Song Qi, the Qi refinement warrior that Su Zimo hired to protect the Su family 2 years ago. 2 years ago, Song Qi had just broken through to become a level 8 Qi refinement warrior. Right now, he was at level 9 Qi refinement warrior. Song Qi looked at the flying sword beneath Su Zimo's feet and his eyes widened in disbelief. In his impression, Su Zimo did not have a spirit root and could not cultivate at all. How was he able to use sword kinesis flight now? Instinctively, Song Qi used his spirit-peering art to check on Su Zimo's cultivation realm. This look gave Song Qi a fright, and he almost fell from the sky. Early-stage foundation establishment. In just 2 short years, a mortal without any foundation, not even a spirit root, had stepped into the foundation establishment realm. Song Qi had not slacked off in the past 2 years, and yet, he had only advanced by a small cultivation realm. In reality, Song Qi did not know that Su Zimo had been trapped in Thunderclap Valley for half a year and his cultivation had not improved at all. Furthermore, half of Su Zimo's spirit qi was spent on tempering his body. How big was the difference between them? Foundation establishment cultivators were considered top-notch cultivators in the entire country of Yen. This was the difference in spirit roots and had nothing to do with talent or cultivation resources. Second young Master Su, you've changed a lot in the past 2 years. Song Qi sighed emotionally and shook his head. If he had not witnessed it for himself, he would not have imagined that the young man back in Pingyang town would have reached such a level today. Demoness Ji blinked at the side and smirked, murmuring softly, "Second young Master Su, hee hee. Interesting. How has first brother been recently?" Su Zimo asked. First young master is fine. However, he often misses the two of you and is worried that you guys will be in danger outside and get bullied. Su Zimo felt a warmth in his heart. Song Qi brought Su Zimo and Demoness Ji to the harem. The harem of the king of Yen was cold and simple without any beautiful women. Along the way, they saw many old acquaintances of the Su family. It was inevitable for them to exchange greetings when old friends met. Chapter 187. The King of Yan's Bedroom. The King of Yen, Su Hong, had a grim expression as he played against Uncle Zheng on a chessboard. They were in a stalemate and the battle was intense. Guards Lu Yu and Yu Qihua stood at the side, guarding the two of them with sharp gazes. Uncle Zheng, Lu Yu, and Yu Qihua were the most senior and most loyal people in the Su family. Even when the Su family was at its lowest and almost destroyed, they did not leave. Young master, you're not young anymore. Do you really intend to continue wasting time and not get married? For years had passed and Uncle Zheng looked much older. However, his eyes were still clear with a wise glint in them. In private, the way everyone addressed each other was no different from before. Su Hong remained silent. Young master, the bloodline of the Su family has to be passed down, Uncle Zheng persuaded again. Su Hong made a move and pointed to the chessboard, smiling. Uncle Zheng, if you continue to be distracted, you're going to lose. When Uncle Zheng saw that Su Hong clearly did not want to talk about this matter, he could not help but smile bitterly and sigh. I'm not as energetic as before. I'm old now. Right then, a loud laugh sounded from outside and Song Qi's voice sounded. Eldest young master, Mr. Zheng, why don't you guess who's here? The door of the King of Yan's bedroom was closed. Su Hong and the others could only vaguely see a figure inside but could not make out the person's appearance. When he heard that, Su Hong shook his head and smiled. What a bluff. Who else can it be? Uncle Zheng pondered for a moment and his heart skipped a beat as he asked softly, could it be second young master or Missy? Xiaoning has joined the immortal sex to cultivate. How would she have the time to return? As for Zimo. A look of worry flashed through Su Hong's eyes. I don't know where that lad went. I haven't seen him for 2 years. Brother, I'm back. A person pushed the door open and entered. He was dressed in green robes and exuded a scholarly aura. He had delicate features, it was Su Zimo. Second young master. It's really second young master. Lu Yu and the others grinned with joy. Zimo. Su Hong's eyes shone brightly. He stood up slowly and walked forward, sizing up Su Zimo. Although he was trying his best to control himself, he could not hide the excitement in his heart. While Su Hong was sizing up Su Zimo was also looking at him. They had not seen each other for 2 years, but Su Hong's appearance had not changed much. When he failed to assassinate the king of Yen, he was disheartened and his hair turned white overnight. Now, he looked like an old man. In fact, Su Hong was only 34 years old this year. Su Hong stretched out both hands and grabbed Su Zimo's shoulders tightly. He shook them vigorously before nodding in satisfaction. Not bad. You're stronger than before. Eldest young master, I'm afraid you still don't know. Second young master Su is also a cultivator now, and his cultivation is much higher than mine. Song Qi said from the side. Oh, really? Su Hong's eyes lit up. Su Zimo did not hide anything and nodded. That's right, brother. I joined a sect called Misty Peak. It's one of the 5 major sects of the Great Zhou dynasty and is not weaker than Xiaoning's Azure Frost sect. Good, good, good. Su Hong nodded repeatedly. Lu Yu and the others were delighted as well. Right then, Su Hong's gaze shifted and he caught sight of the woman beside Su Zimo. He could not help but be stunned as he asked in amazement, "This lady is..." It was only then that Su Zimo recalled that Demoness Ji was still at the side. He was about to introduce her when he heard her voice. It was pleasing to the ears, like pearls falling on a jade plate. "Hello, brother." Su Zimo frowned when he heard those words. It was naturally fine for him to address Su Hong as brother, but why was Demoness Ji joining in the fun? Su Zimo glanced sideways and wanted to remind her. However, he was stunned on the spot and was slightly dazed. Unknowingly, Demoness Ji had removed the veil on her face, revealing a peerless face that could topple all living beings. It was flawless and could not be looked at directly. This time round, there was no hint of seduction coming from Demoness Ji. On the contrary, Demoness Ji looked refined and dignified. She nodded slightly and her cheeks were flushed, as though she was a little shy. Su Zimo's jaw nearly dropped to the ground. This was Demoness Ji. The girl before him was completely different from the seductive and charming Demoness Ji that Su Zimo had in mind. This was clearly a woman from a good family, not a demoness. Demoness Ji moved closer to Su Zimo and tugged at his sleeves, secretly rolling her eyes at him before looking at Su Zimo and saying timidly, "My name is Yen, I'm Zimo's friend." Su Zimo felt goosebumps all over his body when he heard that. So what if she was a friend? What was the meaning of the pause? Initially, that was nothing much. However, after Demoness Ji said that, the meaning changed and caused one's imagination to run wild. True enough. Realization dawned on Su Hong and he nodded happily. Uncle Zheng and Song Qi smiled as well and looked at Demoness Ji with a scrutinizing gaze, feeling more satisfied the more they looked at her. Lu Yu and Yuqihua blinked at Su Zimo and secretly gave him a thumbs up. "Demoness Ji, what are you doing?" Su Zimo pulled Demoness Ji to a corner and asked softly with a frown. "What's wrong?" Demoness Ji had an innocent expression. "Who allowed you to remove that veil?" "It's so impolite to meet my brother with a veil." "That's true," Su Zimo nodded instinctively. However, he felt that something was amiss. On second thought, he came to his senses and glared at Demoness Ji. "Who's your brother?" "That's my brother." "Also, Demoness Ji, why are you pretending in front of my brother? Do you think I don't know what sort of person you are?" Su Zimo sneered. "It's fine if I don't pretend. I'll pounce into your embrace right now and let's get intimate." Demoness Ji glanced sideways at Su Zimo provocatively. Su Zimo was shocked and said hurriedly, "You had better continue pretending." He knew very well that this person before him had no qualms and could truly do something as such. "Zimo, what are you doing?" Right then, Su Hong walked over and said in a deep voice with a hint of reproach, "I heard you mention demoness. She doesn't look like a demoness at all. Don't spout nonsense. To think that you studied the books of the saints for more than 10 years. Although Su Zimo was reprimanded, he could not explain and could only say, "Brother, don't think too much. She's truly a friend of mine and a cultivator as well. Oh. Unexpectedly, Su Hong's eyes lit up and he nodded. That's great. Both of you are cultivators and are compatible in terms of social status. Demoness G's lips curled slightly and an imperceptible smugness flashed through the depths of her eyes. Su Zimo coughed gently and had no choice but to change the topic. Has Xiaoning returned in the past 2 years? No. Su Hong shook his head and asked, you haven't seen her either? Yes. Su Zimo said in a deep voice, however, you don't have to worry, brother. The sect competition is about to begin. At that time, all the sects of the great Zhou dynasty will gather and I'll be able to see Xiaoning. Of course, Su Xiaoning would not be the only one he would see at the sect competition. He might even see some old friends as well. An image appeared in Su Zimo's mind. It was a gentle woman who said to him heartlessly, our fate has come to an end. We're separated by immortals and mortals. I'm afraid we won't meet again. It's true that our fate has come to an end. As for the separation between immortals and mortals, we won't meet again, Fufu. A mocking look flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. Chapter 188. Su Zimo did not leave immediately. Instead, he intended to stay in the palace for a few days to accompany his brother. After all, he did not know when he would return again. Demoness Ji did not leave either and stayed in the palace with Su Zimo. She would only head out occasionally and tease Su Zimo when she had nothing to do. As the king of Yen, Su Hong naturally would not stay in the harem all the time. He would take time out every day to attend court and review memorials. During this period of time, Su Zimo sat quietly in his room, raising his cultivation and cultivating the organ's refinement section. At the same time, he comprehended the bloodline spirit arts he obtained from the stone coffin as well as the Buddha bead. Before leaving Misty Peak, Su Zimo's cultivation realm was already at the peak of early-stage foundation establishment. After the battle in the inheritance ground and obtaining more than half of the bloodline essence of the mysterious skeleton, Su Zimo broke through to mid-stage foundation establishment within a few days. Everything happened naturally. Su Zimo's bloodline realm was extraordinary to begin with and he had already reached the legendary tsunami blood. Naturally, it was relatively easy for him to cultivate those bloodline spirit arts. As for the organ's refinement section, Su Zimo still had no clue about it. He would only think about it occasionally and put it aside because he did not gain anything. During this period of time, Su Zimo's greatest focus was on the mysterious Buddha bead. It was clear that there was a powerful secret skill hidden within the Buddha bead, Fiend Suppression Seal. Each time Su Zimo stared at the Buddha bead, he would fall into an illusion and experience the aura of the golden palm, the hand seals that it conjured, descending from the heavens to suppress evil and destroy mountains of corpses and seas of blood. He pondered and tried to figure it out repeatedly, unwilling to miss out on a single detail. This day, a group of foundation establishment cultivators arrived in the capital of Yen Kingdom. The man and woman in the lead were Su Yu and Qin Mengqi. Junior sister, in my opinion, let's barge into the palace openly and drag Prince Yen out. After inquiring about junior brother Zhou's whereabouts, we'll take our revenge. What do you think? Su Yu asked for Qin Mengqi's opinion with a smile. Qin Mengqi frowned and shook her head. I don't want to see these old friends. I won't go with you. Su Yu rolled his eyes and nodded. That's right. With our status, if we look for the king of Yen, we will elevate his status instead. Junior brothers Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi, please bring a few of your fellow disciples to the palace and invite King Yen, Su Hong over. Su Yu emphasized the word please. His intention was self-evident, he wanted Su Hong to suffer a little. Two iridescent clouds palace cultivators stood out and cupped their fists. Don't worry, senior brother Su. Leave this to us. Su Yu nodded. Both Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi were in the late stage of foundation establishment. In the capital of the country of Yen, they could do whatever they wanted. Not to mention the iridescent clouds palace's sect medallion hanging on their waists. Who would be so blind as to provoke them? Su Yu, Qin Meng Qi, and Shen Nan casually found an inn and stayed there, waiting for Liang Hao, Lu Hongyi, and the rest to bring King Yen over. Among them, the most excited one was Shen Nan. For the past 2 years, ever since Su Hong was conferred the title of king, Shen Nan had been living in fear, afraid that the Su family would settle scores with him one day. But now, Shen Nan no longer had to be afraid. After Su Hong left court today, he headed towards the harem. When he arrived at Su Zimo's door and realized that it was tightly shut, he paused for a moment and turned to leave instead of knocking. He guessed that Su Zimo might be in seclusion and did not disturb him. After returning to his bedroom, Su Hong continued to read through the memorials. Before long, a commotion sounded from outside. Who's there? Ah! Vaguely, there were sounds of fighting and tragic cries, as though someone had barged into the palace and was heading here. Su Hong frowned, but his expression did not change much as he remained calm. Lu Yu and Yu Qihua exchanged glances and hurriedly stood in front of Su Hong, whispering, "Eldest young master, leave from the back." Song Qi stood up and withdrew a flying sword from his storage bag. With a grim expression, he shook his head. "I'm afraid we won't be able to leave." Snap! The moment he said that, the door of the bedroom was slammed open by a tremendous force and shattered into pieces. More than 10 cultivators barged in with huge strides, looking around with their heads held high in an imposing manner. Sweeping his gaze, Song Qi could not help but be shocked and his breathing stagnated. Foundation Establishment Cultivators. More than 10 cultivators, and all of them were Foundation Establishment cultivators. The two in the lead had even higher cultivation realms, they were both late-stage Foundation Establishment cultivators. A force as such was almost destructive to a vassal state. When did the country of Yen offend such a force? Song Qi's mind raced as he pondered. That doesn't make sense. We rarely interacted with cultivators in the past. There's no way we could have offended them. Song Qi's gaze landed on the badges on the waists of the Foundation Establishment cultivators and he focused his gaze. Iridescent clouds. One of the 5 major sects, Iridescent Clouds Palace. Something big had happened. Pretending to be calm, Song Qi revealed a smile and said in a deep voice, "Seniors of Iridescent Clouds Palace, please forgive me for not going out to welcome you." Without even looking at Song Qi, Liang Hao raised his head slightly and looked around with his nose in the air. Finally, he looked at Su Hong who was sitting in the middle and raised his brow. "You're the king of Yen, Su Hong." "That's me." Su Hong stood up slowly with a calm expression. Pushing Lu Yu and Yu Qihua away, he looked straight at Liang Hao and the others. "Fu!" A mocking smile appeared on Lu Hongyi's lips as he chuckled. "Truly, the ignorant are fearless. To think that you can remain so calm even now. I wonder if you'll be scared out of your wits later. May I know why you've barged into the country of Yan's palace?" Su Hong's tone was calm, neither servile nor overbearing. "What's the matter?" Liang Hao's expression darkened as he suddenly hollered, "Su Hong, how dare you? Kneel down when you see the immortals of Iridescent Clouds Palace." His voice was deafening and reverberated throughout the bedroom in an imposing manner. It was as though there was truly an immortal looking down at the masses and questioning them loudly. Even Song Qi's face was pale, let alone mortals. His chest felt stuffy and his heart thumped wildly. Raising his head, Su Hong suddenly laughed and asked instead, "Why should I kneel?" "Indeed, you're ignorant. Seems like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. I've really got to let you suffer a little," Lu Hongyi said sinisterly with a menacing expression. Just as he was about to stride forward, a voice sounded from outside. "The people of Iridescent Clouds Palace sure are promising. Forcing others to kneel for no reason, fufu." That statement was clearly filled with mockery and disdain. Instantly, everyone from Iridescent Clouds Palace was enraged and turned back. A green-robed man strode over. His features were refined and he looked like a scholar. However, when he narrowed his eyes, they were long and narrow like sabers. There was a cold glint in them that was extremely sharp. Behind the green-robed man was a woman in pink. She was so beautiful that it was suffocating. Her eyes seemed to be able to speak as light swirled around her, causing ripples to form in the hearts of many cultivators. Chapter 189. The dozens of cultivators of Iridescent Cloud's palace, be it men or women, were attracted by the looks of the girl in pink and momentarily forgot where they were. It was only when the green-robed man and the girl in pink brushed past everyone and entered the hall that everyone gradually regained their senses. Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi hurriedly used their spirit-peering art to check on the two of them. The girl in pink seemed to have cultivated some sort of secret skill to conceal her cultivation, and her cultivation realm was blurry and unfathomable. There was nothing special about the green-robed cultivator, he was merely a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi sneered internally. When they saw that the green-robed cultivator and the girl in pink did not have any identity badges, they assumed that they were itinerant cultivators or from small sects and were nothing to fear. The moment they caught sight of the girl in pink, be it Liang Hao or Lu Hongyi, both of them had the same thought, to display their strength and gain the favor of the girl in pink. The green-robed cultivator and the girl in pink were naturally Su Zimo and Demoness Ji. Su Zimo walked into the hall and swept his gaze. When he saw that no one was injured, his killing intent dissipated slightly. Even though Song Qi did not say anything, he kept winking at Su Zimo, reminding him that the other party's cultivation realm was higher than his and that he was from Iridescent Cloud's palace with a strong background and strength. When Su Hong saw Su Zimo appear, a look of worry flashed through his eyes as well. Su Zimo smiled gently and nodded to Su Hong, Song Qi, and the others, indicating for them to be at ease. Su Zimo found a random chair and sat down calmly without even looking at the people from Iridescent Cloud's palace. Liang Hao and the others were enraged when they saw that Su Zimo was so arrogant despite his cultivation realm being lower than theirs. "Were you the one who spoke earlier on?" Liang Hao glared at Su Zimo and asked coldly. "That's right." Su Zimo lowered his head and rubbed his thumb and middle finger against each other as he replied expressionlessly. Liang Hao narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "In that case, you have a problem with me asking Su Hong to kneel down." Raising his head, Su Zimo glanced sideways at Liang Hao and asked with a smile, "Are you worthy? You're courting death." Liang Hao made a hand seal with his fingertips, and the spirit energy in his dantian burst forth, condensing a long sword out of thin air. This was one of the more common spirit techniques in the cultivation world, the condensing sword technique. The long sword was condensed with dense spiritual energy as the foundation. Its sharpness was not inferior to a spiritual weapon at all. Moreover, its aura was terrifying as it emitted a sharp pressure. At this moment, Su Zimo also moved. His mind kept replaying the shocking scene he saw when the Buddha beads fell into the illusion. Subconsciously, Su Zimo's middle finger and thumb interlocked, forming a strange hand seal. The secret technique hidden within the Buddhist beads, devil vanquishing seal. At this moment, the spiritual power in his dantian began to circulate crazily, continuously pouring into the hand seal that he had just formed. This speed was too fast. The fiend's suppression seal was like a bottomless pit, devouring the spirit energy in Su Zimo's dantian continuously. Su Zimo had a feeling that if he did not make a move now, the fiend's suppression seal could even absorb all of his spirit energy without leaving a single drop behind. One had to know that the more powerful a spiritual art was, the greater the consumption of spiritual energy. Right now, Su Zimo was at mid-stage foundation establishment. Due to the existence of the blood-bone palm, the quality of his spirit energy was comparable to late-stage foundation establishment. If the fiend's suppression seal could absorb the spirit energy of late-stage foundation establishment, how terrifying would that spirit art be? Su Zimo did not dare to wait any longer and struck right away. Boom! There was a deafening sound. Right in front of everyone, a gigantic golden palm descended from the skies, tearing through the firmaments and crushing the air currents, crushing towards Liang Hao and the others with a terrifying aura. At that moment, everyone who was not involved felt their hearts skip a beat. Pust! Song Qi gasped and his heart skipped a beat. Even though the palm was not targeted at him, he could still feel a suffocating pressure. Demoness Ji's mouth was agape and her eyes were widened in disbelief. As the pure maiden of the fiend's sex, she was naturally discerning. The strength of the spirit art before her had already surpassed her imagination. Even the ancient fiend's sex did not have many spirit arts of this level, let alone Misty Peak. Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi, who were beneath the fiend's suppression seal, were even more shocked as they looked up into the skies with widened, bloodshot eyes and trembling bodies. Both of them could see it clearly. The patterns on the golden palm were clearly visible, as though they were corporeal. It was as though the palm of a divine being was crushing over with a supreme might, wanting to destroy all life. Fellow sect mates, help me. The fiend's suppression seal descended extremely quickly and covered a huge area. Liang Hao could not dodge at all and could only holler in his hurry. Lu Hongyi, who was beside him, was the first to bear the brunt as well. At that moment, both of them had an illusion. It was as though they were not facing a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator, but a perfected foundation establishment cultivator who had unlocked multiple meridians. There was no way Liang Hao could kill Su Zimo in time with his newly formed spirit sword and could only stab towards the golden palm above his head with all his might. Kill! On the other side, Lu Hongyi released his spirit art as well, and an incomparably gigantic mirror shrouded the two of them. It shimmered and rippled, as though it could neutralize all powers. Although the remaining 10 iridescent clouds palace cultivators were not enveloped by the golden palm, they helped out one after another when they saw that their senior brothers were in trouble. Instantly, flying swords crisscrossed and sword chi were like frost as spirit arts were released. They only had a single target, the descending golden palm. Snap! Liang Hao's spirit sword was the first to break. Against the golden palm, it was as though it could not withstand a single blow. Bang! 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 Clang! 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 The flying swords and spirit arts of everyone from Iridescent Cloud's palace collided against the golden palm at the same time. The palm shook and its golden light dimmed significantly. Even so, the golden palm continued to crush down. The golden palm made contact with the spirit mirror created by Lu Hongyi. Piak! The water ripples on the surface of the spirit mirror froze instantly and shattered, causing its spirit energy to dissipate. Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi were flustered as they hurriedly withdrew protection talismans from their storage bags and crushed them. A barrier of light appeared around the two of them. Crack! 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 In the blink of an eye, cracks appeared on the surface of the light barrier and spread rapidly, filling it densely. Bang! The protection talismans had failed. Exclamation point. Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi could not bear the burden and spat out mouthfuls of blood as though they were struck by lightning. Their faces were pale and they looked dispirited. Immediately after, their legs went limp and they knelt on the ground with a thud. Their knees were almost shattered and they were in so much pain that their facial features were scrunched together. The golden palm dissipated after receiving so much impact. The hall was dead silent. This was a scene that no one had expected before. Demoness Ji knew that Su Zimo's melee combat strength was terrifying. However, she truly had not expected that Su Zimo would be able to release such a domineering strength in terms of immortal cultivation methods as well. Two late-stage foundation establishment cultivators were severely injured and lost their combat strength. After all, the remaining 10 Iridescent Clouds Palace cultivators were not enveloped by the Fiend's suppression seal and were only attacking from the side, they were not injured. Even so, the 10 of them expended a lot of spirit energy and looked at Su Zimo with fear in their eyes. Chapter 190. Right from the beginning, Su Zimo sat on the chair without much movement. In fact, he did not even stand up, looking calm and composed. In reality, Su Zimo was rather shocked as well. The power of the fiend's suppression seal had completely exceeded his expectations. At that moment, the spirit energy in his body was almost depleted. If he could provide sufficient spirit energy, how terrifying would the power of the fiend's suppression seal be? According to Su Zimo's conjecture, the power released by the fiend's suppression seal just now was only a portion of the true fiend's suppression seal. It should not even be 30%. What sort of spirit art was that? Even though it was only 30% of its power, Su Zimo's mid-stage foundation establishment spirit energy was almost completely drained. Who are you and what sect are you from? Tell me your name if you have the guts. Liang Hao struggled to stand up and glared at Su Zimo with a venomous gaze as he asked slowly. Who told you to get up? Su Zimo's gaze swept and his voice was cold as he casually knocked the teacup on the table to the ground. How strong was Su Zimo's physique? Even a casual strike was not to be underestimated. Furthermore, Liang Hao was already severely injured. Shoo! The teacup tore through the air and arrived. Before he could react, the teacup smashed heavily onto Liang Hao's knee with a loud bang. The teacup shattered into pieces. Liang Hao was just about to stand up when he knelt down once more after that heavy blow. Ah! Liang Hao cried out in pain. In the blink of an eye, cold sweat trickled down his forehead. At the side, Lu Hongyi was about to stand up as well. However, he was so frightened by this scene that he shuddered and knelt on the ground obediently with his head lowered, not daring to make a sound. The situation was pressing and they would only be asking for trouble if they were stubborn. Although there were still 10 foundation establishment cultivators left from Iridescent Cloud's palace, they were all intimidated by Su Zimo's methods and did not dare to make a move. The 10 Iridescent Cloud's palace cultivators exchanged glances and started retreating with tacit understanding. The matter before them could only be left to senior brother Su Yu and senior sister Chenmeng Qi. It was useless for them to stay here. This isn't over yet. All of you, stay here. Su Zimo sat steadily in the same place, with no intention of getting up. His tone was calm, but it revealed an unquestionable power. Let's go. Someone shouted loudly, took out a flying sword, and fled outside without looking back. Su Zimo pointed forward and shouted, sudden thunder. Crack. Accompanied by a deafening boom, a bolt of lightning as thick as an adult's arm suddenly descended, striking in the middle of the Iridescent Cloud's palace crowd in a dazzling blaze. Densely packed lightning bolts spread out rapidly, crackling loudly. Lightning spells were one of the most ferocious offensive spells among spirit spells. In addition, Su Zimo cultivated the ancient cultivation technique, the Void Lightning Manual. The power of lightning in his bloodline was extremely strong. Of the remaining 10 people, only 4 were in the middle stage of the foundation establishment stage. The other 6 were in the early stage of the foundation establishment stage. How could they withstand the power of the thunderclap? Ah! 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 A series of tragic cries came from the crowd. The 6 early-stage foundation establishment cultivators were charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Smoke billowed from their bodies as they fell to the ground. The 4 mid-stage foundation establishment cultivators were also covered in dust. Although they managed to withstand it, they were already injured. Blood flowed from the corners of their mouths and their black hair curled from the electricity. Su Hong, Song Qi, and the others were already dumbfounded. How could they have expected that their younger brother, the second young master of the Su family, would be this strong in just 2 years? Fellow Daoist, you had better not go overboard. Lu Hongyi gulped and mustered his courage to say. Interesting. Su Zimo laughed. You guys were clearly the ones who came to provoke and forced others to kneel. Why are you accusing me of going overboard? He, don't be arrogant. Liang Hao endured the pain in his knee and said sinisterly, lad, my senior brothers and sisters from Iridescent Cloud's palace are in the capital right now. If they see that we didn't bring Su Hong back, just you wait and see. Oh. Su Zimo heard the hidden meaning and asked with interest, in that case, you guys are here today to take the king of Yen away? Liang Hao replied loudly, so what if we are? Very good. Su Zimo nodded and asked again, why are you taking the king of Yen away? Does he have a feud with you guys or is it because of something else? That's none of your business. Liang Hao harumphed. Although Su Hong is the king of Yen, he's only a mortal. It's his honor that senior brother Su wants to meet him. Honor? Su Zimo sneered with a mocking expression, since that's the case, I'll let one of you go. You, go back and tell your senior brother Su to relay my words to him. Su Zimo pointed at a Iridescent Cloud's palace cultivator who was slightly injured and said indifferently, if you want to meet the king of Yen, sure. Get over here yourself. The Iridescent Cloud's palace cultivator nodded in fear and fled on his sword as though he had been pardoned. In an inn near the royal city, Su Yu and Chen Meng Qi were eating and chatting casually. Su Yu asked in concern, junior sister, you don't look too good. Are you feeling unwell? It's nothing. Chen Meng Qi shook her head and frowned slightly. I don't know why, but I feel an inexplicable sense of frustration. Su Yu smiled. Junior sister, you don't have to think too much. If you don't want to meet these old friends, just avoid Su Hong when he arrives later. Leave everything to me. Yes, Chen Meng Qi nodded. Right then, the sound of clothes fluttering could be heard from afar. It was clear that someone was flying over on a sword at an extremely fast speed, as though they were flustered. Su Yu frowned and waved his robes gently. The door of the house opened and a figure sped over. Junior brother Lu. Su Yu and Chen Meng Qi were slightly stunned. The person's clothes were torn and there were even burn marks on some parts of his body. The person rushed over in a hurry with curly black hair and white smoke rising from his head, as though he had just been struck by lightning. Junior brother Lu, how could you be so careless to be struck by lightning? Su Yu frowned and reprimanded, to think that you don't even know how to hide despite your immortal cultivation methods. Look at how you're behaving. The cultivator with the surname Lu was about to withdraw his flying sword and land when he heard that. He could not help but aggravate his injuries and spat out a mouthful of blood, falling to the ground. Su Yu went forward and helped him up. Su Yu's expression changed, he could sense the fluctuation of spirit arts from the person who arrived. Your injuries were caused by thunder arts? Su Yu asked with a frown. The cultivator with the surname Lu finally caught his breath and nodded. Senior brother Su, something happened. Before long, he recounted everything that happened in the palace. In fact, he even conveyed the words that Su Zimo asked him to convey. What big words. How dare a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator speak so arrogantly to me? Su Yu's expression darkened as he asked, what's that person's name? What sect is he from? This. I don't know. The cultivator with the surname Lu shook his head. Chapter 191. Cultivator Lu frowned and tried to recall. That person wore a green robe and had delicate features. He looked like a cultured and refined scholar. Pausing for a moment, Cultivator Lu grumbled indignantly, but it was all a lie. Who would have thought that this frail scholar would be so strong and be so terrifying the moment he attacked? When she heard that, Chen Meng Qi's heart skipped a beat. In her mind, a familiar figure flashed past. For the past 4 years, that figure had already been sealed in the depths of her memories and was almost forgotten. It was only after she returned to her hometown that she recalled some of her childhood memories, adding a hint of melancholy. After hearing junior brother Lu's description, the first person that came to Chen Meng Qi's mind was Su Zimo for some reason. However, in the blink of an eye, Chen Meng Qi smiled gently and shook her head, denying that thought. That thought was truly ridiculous. Su Zimo did not even have a spirit root, how could he cultivate and possess such immense strength? Chen Mengqi had never regretted her decision back then. Even if she had to do it all over again, she would choose to leave Su Zimo and Pingyang town to follow perfected being Tsang Lang into cultivation. After 4 years of cultivation, she was increasingly certain of one thing. As time passed by, the gap between her and Su Zimo would only widen until there was no possibility of them ever crossing paths. Let's go to the palace. I want to see which blind person dared to hurt a cultivator of iridescent cloud's palace. Su Yu's voice pulled Chen Mengqi back from her messy thoughts. Chen Mengqi frowned. Senior brother Su, that person's cultivation realm is at mid-stage foundation establishment, but he has the strength to defeat late-stage foundation establishment cultivators. We can't be careless. Yes, Su Yu smiled. Don't worry, junior sister. I know what I'm doing. According to junior brother Lu's description, that person should have mastered a superior spirit art. He relied on that spirit art to suppress Liang Hao and the others. Chen Mengqi nodded. However, the more superior a spirit art is, the more spirit energy it consumes. Su Yu sneered and continued, if I'm not wrong, that person's spirit energy is already depleted. He won't be able to recover much in a short period of time and is at his weakest. Senior brother Su, senior sister Chen, let's not delay any longer. Let's make a move now. Yes. 3 sword lights rose into the sky. Chen Mengqi carried Shen Nan, Su Yu, and cultivator Lu towards the palace. Soon, Su Yu and the other 3 arrived at the entrance of the King of Yan's bedroom on their swords. The door was wide open. From outside, he could see Liang Hao, Lu Hongyi, and the other iridescent clouds palace cultivators kneeling on the ground dejectedly. Since the 4 of them were riding on their swords and looking down from above, they couldn't see who else was in the hall. Su Yu and the other 3 withdrew their flying swords and landed at the entrance of the main hall. At first glance, the 4 of them saw a middle-aged man with a head full of white hair sitting in the middle. Of course, the most obvious feature of this person was the slanted scar on his face. It was hideous and shocking, and it almost split his entire face into 2. Chen Mengqi felt emotional when she saw Su Hong. Of course, she knew Su Hong, but she didn't have a deep impression of him. Even though the person before her had already become the emperor of a country and wielded great authority, compared to her, his standing and strength were still far inferior. It was as if they were clouds and mud. Su Hong was slightly stunned when he saw Chen Mengqi. A girl from the Shen family? After not seeing her for 4 years, he could barely recognize that gentle and simple girl from back then. From Chen Mengqi's body, he could clearly feel a coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. Although they were both cultivators, Su Hong did not sense that coldness from Su Zimo. At that moment, Su Hong suddenly felt thankful. He was thankful that Chen Mengqi had left his younger brother back then. They were not the same type of people to begin with. Shen Mengqi's gaze paused for a moment on Su Hong's face before shifting to the 2 people sitting at the side. A green-robed man sat on a chair at the side of the main hall with his side facing the entrance. He was leisurely tasting the freshly brewed fragrant tea with a calm expression. When she saw the green-robed man, Shen Mengqi felt as though she was struck by lightning. Her petite body trembled and she froze on the spot. Shaking her head gently, Shen Mengqi's mouth was slightly agape. Her eyes were filled with disbelief and she felt her mind go blank. Even though it was only a side profile. Even though they had not seen each other for 4 years. Even though this person had matured a lot. However, Shen Mengqi still recognized him immediately. If this was any other time, so you would have definitely noticed Shen Mengqi's abnormality. However, at that moment, his entire attention was attracted by the girl in pink who was seated below the green-robed man and he had almost forgotten where he was. The girl in pink looked at him with a smile and her eyes curved into crescents, seemingly filled with tenderness. Ah! Right then, an exclamation sounded from the main hall. Shen Nan had clearly recognized the green-robed man's identity and his expression changed. Back then, this person wielded a saber and fought in a bloodbath in the courtyard of the Zhao family. The impression he left on Shen Nan was way too deep. It was almost a nightmare that he could not get rid of. Even though Su Yu and Shen Mengqi were standing beside him, the fear that came from the depths of his memories still caused Shen Nan to be so frightened that he exclaimed. That exclamation was somewhat familiar. It was only then that Su Zimo put down the teacup in his hands slowly and glanced sideways at the entrance. Their gazes met. Instantly, it was as though space and time had reversed. Scenes flashed before his eyes and gradually dissipated. For a long time, he was speechless. Shen Mengqi had a conflicted expression. Su Zimo was slightly taken aback. However, his eyes regained their composure before long. From the moment he stepped onto the path of cultivation, Su Zimo knew that he would definitely meet Shen Mengqi again. However, he did not expect that it would be on such an occasion and today. 4 years ago, Shen Mengqi left resolutely and Su Zimo suffered a huge blow. He could still remember that heart-wrenching pain even till now. If not for Dai Yu's appearance, it would have been difficult for him to get out of that predicament within a short period of time. Initially, Su Zimo thought that he was filled with resentment towards Shen Mengqi. In fact, he had even imagined that if the two of them were to meet again, he would stand before Shen Mengqi and tell her proudly that there was nothing great about her world. However, things were different from what he had imagined. When he met Shen Mengqi again, Su Zimo was extremely calm and even carefree. Unknowingly, Shen Mengqi had already become a passerby in his life, an ordinary old friend. However, at that moment, Shen Mengqi's heart was filled with a myriad of emotions and her mouth felt bitter. It had been 4 years. He did not seem to have changed much. He was still dressed in green robes and exuded a scholarly aura. However, Shen Mengqi had just used her spirit-peering art and could naturally tell that Su Zimo was already a cultivator. Furthermore, he was a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator. How could this be? Suddenly, the atmosphere in the hall turned strange. Many disciples of Iridescent Cloud's palace knelt on the ground with bitter and confused expressions. When senior sister Shen entered the hall and caught sight of the green-robed cultivator, she became distracted and confused. It was the same for senior brother Su as he stared at the girl in pink non-stop. Nobody bothered about them at all. Chapter 192. Even though Su Zimo looked calm and composed, Demoness Ji still noticed that something was amiss. Her eyes shone with a strange glint but she did not say anything. Su Zimo tapped his finger on the table to attract everyone's attention before saying slowly, "Tell me, why are you looking for my brother?" There were no pleasantries or greetings. Su Zimo's direct questioning left Shen Mengqi at a loss as a look of panic flashed through her eyes. Su Zimo's gaze shifted to Shen Nan who was cowering at the side. Raising his brow, he asked, "Are you here for revenge?" Shen Nan shuddered when Su Zimo stared at him, shaking his head like a rattledrum. "It was your idea." After a slight pause, Su Zimo shifted his gaze to Shen Mengqi's face and asked coldly, "Or was it your idea, And no." Shen Mengqi shook her head instinctively. She was a cultivator after all. Taking a deep breath, Shen Mengqi calmed herself down and explained, "It's just that 2 years ago, a junior brother of our sect might have gone missing in the country of Yen. We're here to take a look and ask the king of Yen for some information." "Oh, right. You know the missing person as well. He's from Pingyang town and his name is Zhou." At that point, Shen Mengqi suddenly paused. Looking at Su Zimo, Shen Mengqi seemed to have understood something. Before this, she had never thought that Zhou Dingyun's disappearance would have anything to do with Su Zimo. However, if Su Zimo was a mid-stage foundation establishment cultivator, he should have been a cultivator 2 years ago as well. Furthermore, Su Zimo and Zhou Dingyun already had a feud to begin with. The truth of the matter was about to be revealed. 2 years ago, Zhou Dingyun returned to Pingyang town and wanted to find trouble with Su Zimo. However, he was killed by Su Zimo and all traces of him were erased. Shen Mengqi's guess was not far from the truth. 2 years ago, Su Zimo was not a cultivator yet, but he had the strength to kill Zhou Dingyun. At this moment, Chen Mengqi had already calmed down. Su Zimo had become a cultivator just like him. However, his spiritual root was not good enough, and his aptitude was not as good as his own. Moreover, he did not enter any great sect, and his future achievements would be far from his own. In Iridescent Cloud's palace, the people he befriended were all geniuses of the cultivation world. Su Zimo, on the other hand, had no background or influence. He could only hang around at the bottom of the cultivation world and could lose his life at any time. In the same 4 years, he had already reached the peak of the Foundation Establishment realm and opened up a meridian, while Su Zimo had only reached the middle stage of the Foundation Establishment realm. This was the gap between them. Moreover, Chen Mengqi believed that as time passed, this gap would only grow bigger and bigger. Chen Mengqi was very sure. His decision back then was still correct. At this thought, Chen Mengqi regained her confidence and calmness. She smiled at Su Zimo and said, "You've changed a lot in the past few years." Su Zimo was about to speak when he felt a lotus root-like arm around his arm. A fragrance wafted over as Demoness Ji's voice sounded in his ears, "Zimo, who is this woman?" Chen Mengqi frowned. It was only at this moment that she noticed a girl in pink sitting beside Su Zimo. More importantly, be it in terms of looks or temperament, this girl in pink was definitely superior to her. Looking at how the girl in pink was hugging Su Zimo intimately, Chen Mengqi felt uncomfortable, as though something that belonged to her had been snatched away. Chen Mengqi looked at Demoness Ji and asked coldly, "Who are you? What do you think?" Demoness Ji smiled like a flower and squeezed towards Su Zimo's side. She raised her chin slightly and looked at Chen Mengqi in a threatening manner. Su Zimo removed Demoness Ji's arm and was about to speak when his heart skipped a beat. He felt a killing intent. "If the king of Yen is your elder brother, does that mean that you're Su Zimo?" When Su Yu saw that Demoness Ji was about to squeeze into the embrace of the green-robed cultivator, his eyes spat fire as he interjected with a murderous aura. Su Zimo asked instead, "So what if I am? Were you the one who injured my fellow sect mates as well?" Su Yu narrowed his eyes and asked again. Su Zimo nodded. "That's right." "All right, hand over your life then." Su Yu hollered and conjured hand seals with his hands, his eyes turning cold. All of a sudden, in a flash, Chen Mengqi stood in front of Su Yu and frowned, whispering, "Senior brother Su, let's forget about this. I'm afraid there's a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Su Yu's expression darkened. "He injured so many fellow sect mates of Iridescent Cloud's palace. Is this considered a misunderstanding?" If this was in the past, Su Yu would not refute anything that Chen Mengqi said. But now, Su Yu was completely bewitched by Demoness Ji. He only knew that he had to kill the green-robed cultivator before him to possess Demoness Ji's body and mind. Chen Mengqi pursed her lips. "I'll get him to apologize to all of you right now. Senior brother, please spare him this once." With that said, Chen Mengqi turned to Su Zimo and whispered, "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and apologize." Suddenly, Su Zimo laughed with a mocking look in his eyes. "You guys were the ones who came to provoke me and suffered. Why should I apologize?" Frowning, Chen Mengqi glared at Su Zimo and hollered, "Su Zimo, don't be ungrateful. I'm trying to save you." "Oh." Su Zimo's smile did not diminish. Chen Mengqi continued, "Do you know about the 5 major sects? Do you know about Iridescent Cloud's palace? In the cultivation world, there are some people and factions that you can't afford to offend. Hurry up and apologize." At the side, Demoness Ji clapped her hands and laughed. "Sister, you're right. In the cultivation world, there are some people and factions that you can't afford to offend. Fufu. Suyu laughed menacingly. Junior sister, you have to be sincere in your apology. I'll only spare him if Su Zimo kneels before me and kowtows 3 times obediently. In Suyu's opinion, it might be better to humiliate Su Zimo in front of the girl in pink without killing him. Senior brother, isn't that a little too much? Chen Mengqi frowned slightly. Humph. Suyu said coldly, this isn't over. Not only does Su Zimo have to kneel and apologize, his elder brother has to kneel before us as well. Senior brother, I'm begging you. This matter, there's no room for discussion. Right then, Su Zimo suddenly stood up and walked towards Suyu expressionlessly. Thinking that Su Zimo had compromised and was here to apologize, Suyu could not help but laugh smugly. Ha, at least you know what's good for you. How annoying. Su Zimo arrived before Suyu and said something. Suddenly, he reached out and gripped Suyu's throat with lightning speed. He squeezed forcefully. Crack. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Suyu's eyes were bloodshot and almost popped out as he looked at Su Zimo in disbelief. He had not expected that Su Zimo would dare to attack him. More than that, he had not expected that Su Zimo would dare to kill him. Furthermore, he was killed in a single strike without giving him any chance. Su Zimo released his grip and heaved a sigh of relief, murmuring softly, now, it's quiet. Suyu's head tilted and he fell to the ground with a thud. He was dead. There was a dead silence in the hall. Complete silence. Chapter 193. Liang Hao, Lu Hongyi, and the other disciples of Iridescent Cloud's palace knelt on the ground, trembling. They looked at Su Zimo with fear and their palms were sweating profusely. Shen Mengqi stood rooted to the ground, staring blankly at Suyu who had died with grievances on the ground with a look of disbelief. Everything happened too quickly and Shen Mengqi's head buzzed as though it was about to explode in a chaotic manner. Su Zimo. How dare he? Is he crazy? Has he thought about the consequences? At the side, Demoness Ji narrowed her eyes and licked her lips. To be fair, Demoness Ji was the calmest among everyone present. Although she had not interacted with Su Zimo for a long time, she had a vague understanding of Su Zimo's temperament. This was a man who looked frail on the outside but had a ferocious heart. He was decisive in killing and would strike with a thunderous might without giving anyone a chance to catch their breath. Even the fiend heir of malevolent Earth sect was killed by him. Yet, a mere cultivator of Iridescent Cloud's palace was still grumbling recklessly. Su Zimo, do you know what you're doing? Do you know how much trouble you've caused? Shen Mengqi glared at Su Zimo agitatedly and questioned him loudly. Su Zimo smiled, looking as though he did not care at all. Shen Mengqi was even angrier as she clenched her fists and shouted, I didn't expect that you're still so immature after 4 years. You might be able to escape for a moment because you're a cultivator. However, have you ever thought that your brother is in the capital of Yen country? Have you ever thought that you'll implicate your family? Su Zimo glanced sideways and waved his sleeves. A golden cloth floated over from the table in front of Su Hong, exuding a faint authority as though the emperor had descended to patrol the world. The emperor's edict. Shen Mengqi and the others recognized the origin of the golden cloth right away and were shocked. The status of the emperor of Great Zhou was much higher than theirs. Su Zimo said faintly, my big brother has the emperor's edict with him. Whoever dares to have any ideas about him is going against the emperor and the entire Great Zhou dynasty. Everyone from Iridescent Cloud's palace remained silent. Besides, the grudges of the cultivators should not be blamed on mortals. Pausing for a moment, Su Zimo swept his gaze across the Iridescent Cloud's palace crowd before finally landing on Chen Mengqi's face. He slowly said, whoever dares to have designs on my big brother and break the rules first, I'm sorry. I'll slaughter his entire family. As soon as he finished speaking, a shocking baleful aura burst out from Su Zimo's body. It was almost tangible, causing people's hearts to tremble. The temperature in the entire hall plummeted. Liang Hao and the others trembled and hurriedly avoided Su Zimo's gaze, not daring to meet his eyes. In Chen Mengqi's eyes, the current Su Zimo had suddenly become extremely unfamiliar, completely becoming a person she did not know. How was this a frail scholar? This was clearly a demon god from hell bathed in blood, a bloodthirsty and violent ancient demon. That feeling was fleeting, as though it was an illusion. In the cultivation world, although there were no rules set out on the surface, many cultivators had a tacit understanding that they would try their best not to implicate mortals in their grudges. Taking a deep breath, Chen Mengqi composed herself and continued, "All right, even if no one comes looking for trouble with your big brother, you'll have to account for killing a disciple of Iridescent Cloud's palace. From now on, you'll be on the run without a fixed residence and live in fear every day. Is that what you want?" Su Zimo smiled and looked at Chen Mengqi calmly, asking instead, "Who said that I'll be homeless? Even now, you're still stubborn." Chen Mengqi looked at Su Zimo in disappointment. Iridescent Cloud's palace is one of the 5 major sects of the Great Zhou dynasty. As long as you're within the borders of the Great Zhou dynasty, who can protect you? Which sect would dare to take you in? Su Zimo, wake up. Piak. Right then, Su Zimo withdrew a long badge from his storage bag and threw it on the table beside him. "I forgot to tell you that I'm a disciple of Misty Peak. It's no big deal for me to kill someone from Iridescent Cloud's palace. Naturally, Misty Peak will protect me." Chen Mengqi stared fixedly at the identity badge on the table and bit her cherry lips, stunned on the spot. She could no longer say the words that she had prepared. Misty Peak. After 4 years, Su Zimo had joined one of the 5 major sects, Misty Peak. From the moment she saw Su Zimo, Chen Mengqi had been looking down on Su Zimo with a condescending attitude. However, all of a sudden, Chen Mengqi realized that Su Zimo seemed to possess the same thing that she was relying on. Her pride seemed to have become worthless. In 4 years, not only did the gap between the two of them not widen, it narrowed instead. What comforted Chen Mengqi was that she was still superior to Su Zimo in terms of cultivation realm. "I'm at Misty Peak. I'll take on whoever wants revenge." Su Zimo's tone was calm, as though he was talking about something insignificant. After a moment of silence, Chen Mengqi looked at Su Zimo with a complicated expression. She turned back and said, "Let's go back to the sect." With that said, Chen Mengqi walked towards Liang Hao and Lu Hongyi, wanting to help them up. The two of them looked at Su Zimo carefully. When they saw that the latter was expressionless and did not object, they endured the pain and stood up. Everyone from Iridescent Cloud's palace supported one another and left the King of Yan's bedroom. A gentle breeze blew and a chill came over their bodies. Unknowingly, everyone had already broken out in cold sweat. It was only when they walked out of the door that everyone heaved a sigh of relief, feeling as though they had survived a calamity. They were all Foundation establishment cultivators, but for some reason, everyone felt their chests tighten in front of Su Zimo. It was as though they were shrouded by an inexplicable ferocity and did not even dare to breathe loudly. Chen Mengqi whispered to everyone from Iridescent Cloud's palace, "Leave the palace first. I'll chase after you later. Senior Sister Chen, don't go and fight that Su Zimo. What if?" Lu Hongyi's heart skipped a beat as he persuaded hurriedly. The others nodded repeatedly with fearful expressions as well. It would be fine if Chen Mengqi won. However, if she lost, they were worried that they would be implicated and lose their lives here. "Senior Sister Chen, spare him this once. There will be many chances to take his life in the future." While another person persuaded, he also flattered Chen Mengqi subtly. "Don't worry, I'll be right back." "I won't fight with him," Chen Mengqi revealed a reassuring smile and turned to leave. Arriving before Su Zimo, Chen Mengqi glared at him and said coldly, "Come out. I have something to tell you." With that, Chen Mengqi turned and walked outside. Chen Mengqi's tone caused Su Zimo to frown. "What's the matter?" Why are you being so mysterious that you have to hide it from us? Demoness Ji's gaze darted between Su Zimo and Chen Mengqi as she asked meaningfully. Clang! Clang! Right then, Su Zimo rapped his fingers on the table. If you have anything to say it here. Su Zimo did not stand up and said calmly with a lowered gaze. Chen Mengqi paused in her tracks with her back facing Su Zimo. Her expression changed continuously as she grit her teeth and turned around slowly. Chapter 194. Chen Mengqi said, "Thank you for not holding a grudge against my brother and sparing his life." Su Zimo said, "Thank you for your reminder back then. Take it as me returning the favor." Seeing this scene, everyone in the Su family was filled with emotions. They had watched Su Zimo and Chen Mengqi grow up. The two of them were childhood sweethearts. When they met again 4 years later, there was no joy in their reunion. They did not deliberately distance themselves from each other. They only thanked each other politely and calmly. Of course, only Chen Mengqi understood the meaning of these two sentences. Everyone else was confused and did not know the inside story. 4 years ago, before the two of them parted, Chen Mengqi caught up with Su Zimo and said something. One of the sentences was, "Zhou Dingyun and I will leave Pingyang town with perfected person tomorrow." This sentence seemed like nothing. However, if one thought about it carefully, one would realize that there was no need to mention Zhou Dingyun in this sentence. At that time, perfected Sang Lang was standing in mid-air and Chen Mengqi did not dare to remind him too obviously. However, she believed that with Su Zimo's shrewdness, he would definitely be able to understand the hidden meaning of this sentence. In fact, this was indeed the case. After Su Zimo returned to the mansion, he began to pretend to be drunk. He successfully confused Zhou Dingyun and scared him off. Of course, even without Chen Mengqi's reminder, Zhou Dingyun would not be able to succeed with Daiyu around. After a moment of silence, Chen Mengqi asked, "Did you kill Zhou Dingyun?" "Yes." Su Zimo did not hide the truth. He had even killed Su Yu. Naturally, he did not care about killing Zhou Dingyun. "Zimo, although you are a disciple of Misty Peak, I still want to say that you were too reckless just now." Chen Mengqi said, "If you did not kill Su Yu, I would have helped you to hide Zhou Dingyun's matter. This way, at least you would not be on bad terms with Iridescent Cloud's palace. But now, you killed Su Yu in front of everyone. I can't help you to hide it even if I want to." "Why do I have to hide it?" Su Zimo asked. "Huh?" Chen Mengqi was stunned. Su Zimo said calmly, "If I want to hide this matter, the simplest way is to kill all of you." Chen Mengqi was shocked. Looking at Su Zimo's eyes, she had a feeling that Su Zimo was not joking. Su Zimo continued, "I didn't kill you because I didn't plan on hiding this matter. Naturally, I'm not afraid of becoming enemies with Iridescent Cloud's palace." Recalling perfected being Sang Lang's face, a killing intent flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. "Furthermore, I've long been on bad terms with Iridescent Cloud's palace." Hearing this, Chen Mengqi's heart skipped a beat. She seemed to have thought of something. Frowning, she asked, "Su Zimo, you're not still thinking of taking revenge on my master, are you?" "Oh, is perfected Sang Lang your master?" Su Zimo smiled with a mocking expression and said, "How unfortunate. Go back and tell him to live well. One day, I will personally take his life." "Su Zimo, that's enough." Chen Mengqi was a little agitated as she questioned loudly, "Just because of that horse of yours, you want to kill my master?" "That horse?" Su Zimo stood up slowly with a cold glint in his eyes. A thick malevolent aura spread out with that simple action. Arriving before Chen Mengqi, Su Zimo glared at her with a gaze as sharp as a knife. In fact, Chen Mengqi even had an illusion that Su Zimo's gaze was truly piercing her. Instinctively, she took half a step back. At that moment, she had even forgotten that her cultivation realm was higher than Su Zimo's. Su Zimo said coldly, if not for Zhui Feng, I would have been the one who died back then. Your master wanted my life back then. Chen Mengqi could not refute that. She had seen everything that had happened back then. If not for the fact that Zhui Feng was psychic and managed to escape in time, Su Zimo would have been burned to ashes as well. Taking a deep breath of air, Chen Mengqi raised her head and looked straight at Su Zimo, saying in a deep voice, after not seeing you for 4 years, I didn't expect you to become so arrogant, ignorant and overestimating yourself. What right do you have to seek revenge on my master as a foundation establishment cultivator? As time passes, your cultivation realm and strength will increase. However, my master will not remain stagnant. His strength will increase as well. You will never be able to catch up to him and you will never be able to seek revenge. Pausing for a moment, Chen Mengqi sneered, also, just now, I haven't attacked you. It's not because I can't defeat you, it's because I don't want to fight you on account of our past relationship. However, don't push your luck. Do you think that you have the strength to defeat me, a perfected foundation establishment cultivator, just because you killed senior brother Su with a sneak attack? Su Zimo looked at Chen Mengqi calmly. At this distance, he had 100 ways to defeat Chen Mengqi. Sadly, truly ignorant people did not know that they were ignorant. Seemingly unsatisfied, Chen Mengqi continued, Su Zimo, there are way too many geniuses in the cultivation world and there are countless people stronger than you. You're nothing. Given your cultivation, you're not even qualified to participate in the sect competition organized by the great Zhou dynasty. That's a grand banquet in the cultivation world where top foundation establishment cultivators will spar. When she heard that, Demoness Ji could no longer hold it in and burst into laughter, interrupting Chen Mengqi. What are you laughing at? Chen Mengqi asked coldly. Demoness Ji ignored her completely and looked around as though she was searching for something. I heard a frog at the bottom of a well calling out earlier on. How annoying. Chen Mengqi's expression darkened as she placed her palm on her storage bag and said coldly, Who are you calling a frog in a well? Demoness Ji noticed Chen Mengqi's actions and smiled gently. It's fine if you're a frog in a well, but to think that you're a frog in a well who thinks that you're infallible, bragging to others about how big the sky is. What a joke. All right. Chen Mengqi harumphed coldly and hollered, I'll show you the capabilities of a frog in a well then. The moment she said that, Chen Mengqi conjured hand seals with her left hand and slapped her storage bag with her right, causing a flying sword to appear in her palm. Boom. A vibration sounded from within Chen Mengqi's body. Immediately after, a meridian shone brightly like a divine dragon and roared within Chen Mengqi's body, emitting rich spirit qi. It was one of the 8 extraordinary meridians. The spirit-peering art could only detect that a cultivator was at perfected foundation establishment, but it could not determine how many meridians they had unlocked. The more meridians they unlocked, the richer their spirit energy and the stronger their strength. It was clear that Chen Mengqi had unlocked a spirit meridian. Swash! The moment Chen Mengqi made her move, a pink figure flashed and appeared before her instantly. Demoness Ji reached out with her left hand and grabbed Chen Mengqi's left wrist with lightning speed. Chen Mengqi's expression changed and her left arm went numb. The spirit energy in her meridians was sluggish and she could not circulate it. The next moment, Chen Mengqi felt a chill on her neck and a slight pain as cold air entered her body. Chen Mengqi's expression was terrible as she froze on the spot, not daring to move at all. Demoness Ji closed in and said with a smile, Believe me when I say that you're a frog in a well. If someone like you really enters the ancient battlefield, you'll only be waiting to die. Chapter 195. Chen Mengqi's face was pale as she panted slightly, not daring to refute. Although Demoness Ji was smiling, her smile was very beautiful. As a woman, Chen Mengqi could sense a hint of killing intent and hostility from Demoness Ji's smile. The two of them had never met before and there was no grudge between them. However, There was only a single possibility for the girl in pink to want to kill her. It was because of Su Zimo. Chen Mengqi's gaze shifted to Su Zimo. Her emotions were complicated and she felt an inexplicable sense of bitterness. Why? What did Su Zimo have that made this woman who surpassed her in terms of looks and strength fall in love with him? In reality, the relationship between Su Zimo and Demoness Ji was not what Chen Mengqi had imagined. However, Su Zimo could not be bothered to explain and there was no need for that either. Let her go, Su Zimo said indifferently. Demoness Ji glanced sideways and looked at Su Zimo calmly. A look of mockery flashed through her eyes as she asked with a smile, why? You can't bear to. Su Zimo frowned. All right, I'll listen to you. Demoness Ji changed her tone immediately and said coquettishly. Letting go of Chen Mengqi, she returned to Su Zimo's side and stood there prettily. Chen Mengqi felt the chill at her neck dissipate and heaved a long sigh of relief. Unknowingly, she was drenched in sweat. After this turn of events, Chen Mengqi no longer had the face to stay here. Harumphing coldly, she turned to leave. Summoning her flying sword, she soared into the air. Turning back, Chen Mengqi looked at the green-robed man in the palace behind her with a conflicted expression. She would never have thought that after 4 years, the two of them would meet again under such circumstances. Could I have been wrong back then? If I had not chosen to leave Pingyang town with Master, would I have followed Zimo and joined Misty Peak to cultivate? No, I wasn't wrong. Chen Mengqi took a deep breath and muttered to herself with a determined gaze, I will prove myself at the sect competition. I will prove that I made the right choice back then. At that highly anticipated cultivation event, I'll obtain unparalleled glory for my sect and make a name for myself in the great Zhou dynasty before entering the ancient battlefield. As for you, you'll just be a spectator. Outside the King of Yan's bedroom, Su Zimo stood on the stone steps not far away. With his hands behind his back, he stood against the wind and his black hair fluttered gently. Demoness Ji moved gracefully and arrived behind Su Zimo. Her eyes burned with the flames of gossip as she asked, who was that person? Su Zimo acted as if he didn't hear anything. TSK, she pouted her lips. Even if you don't say it, I can guess that it's your old flame, right? Su Zimo's expression changed as he glanced sideways at Demoness Ji. What I'm most curious about right now is why did she leave you back then? Demoness Ji could not figure it out. Resting her chin with her petite hand, she frowned. At the very least, you're already very strong among the younger generation. I don't believe that there's anyone in Iridescent Cloud's palace who can surpass you. Why did that woman leave you? Isn't that a stupid choice? I was rather ordinary back then, Su Zimo replied. I don't believe it. She shook her head. She must have had bad taste. Pausing for a moment, she smiled smugly. However, that makes me seem even more impressive. My discerning eyes made me choose you right away, hee hee. However, Su Zimo did not laugh and asked instead, what exactly do you want after following me for so long? Perhaps you haven't realized it yourself but your personality is closer to that of a fiend. Demoness Ji looked at Su Zimo meaningfully and said in a deep voice, you abhor evil and are decisive in killing. Actually, you're suited to cultivate in the fiend's sections. That's your motive? Su Zimo shook his head. I'm not suited for the fiend's sections. Why do you say that? Su Zimo gazed into the distance and said indifferently, the path I want to take is different from others. Even the fiend's sects might not be able to accommodate me. At that moment, she suddenly realized that she could not understand Su Zimo anymore. What path do you want to take? She asked instinctively. Su Zimo did not explain. After thinking for a moment, he changed the topic and asked, just now, what's the ancient battlefield you mentioned? You know that the great Zhou dynasty holds a sect competition every 10 years, right? Yes, Su Zimo nodded. 2 years ago, Ji Yaoshue mentioned this. It was a grand event in the Great Zhou dynasty where all the sects of the dynasty would gather to spar. Cultivation realms were only limited to those below Jin Dan realm. In other words, it was a contest between foundation establishment cultivators. The Great Zhou dynasty would create 4 lists: spirit, talisman, elixir, and weapon. There were only 10 spots on each list and the competition was intense. However, it also meant that it was the best chance to make a name for oneself. Furthermore, the Great Zhou dynasty would reward the cultivators on the 4 lists handsomely. It was said that there was an additional mysterious reward. Demoness Ji continued, actually, the mysterious reward is to cultivate for a year in the ancient battlefield. Cultivate for a year. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Demoness Ji smiled. Don't underestimate that 1 year. Even if you cultivate outside for 10 or 100 years, you might not be able to match a year in the ancient battlefield. There are countless treasures within and many lost cultivation techniques, elixir recipes, talismans, and even weapon refinement techniques can be found within. The opportunities within are unimaginable for you right now. Su Zimo's blood boiled and he was shocked. Demoness Ji continued, there are some things that you might not know. Back then, the founder master of True Fire sect obtained a lost fire-type secret skill in the ancient battlefield. From there, he established True Fire sect and became one of the 5 major sects of the Great Zhou dynasty. One of the 3 great secret skills of Misty Peak was obtained from the ancient battlefield as well. It's not an exaggeration to say that all geniuses of Tianhuang mainland have to make their way in there. Those who can return alive are true paragons. If they die in there. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he recalled the terrifying expert of Misty Peak. That person had said that the Void Lightning incantation was obtained from an ancient ruin. Suddenly, a question flashed through Su Zimo's mind as he asked, since the ancient battlefield is so good, why don't we send perfected Jin Dan or Jining Jinjuan in? Wouldn't we have a higher chance of obtaining treasures and inheritances that way? Demoness Ji explained, actually, every single ancient battlefield is a remnant of the ancient era and forms its own dimension. For the most basic ancient battlefield, only foundation establishment cultivators can be teleported in. Furthermore, many void reversions have to join forces to break through the spatial barrier. Given the strength of the Great Zhou dynasty, they can only teleport dozens of foundation establishment cultivators at most. That's why they organize the sect competition. Su Zimo said in a low voice, in that case, only Jin Dan cultivators can enter the intermediate ancient battlefield? Yes. Demoness Ji nodded. However, there's no one in the Great Zhou dynasty who has the strength to send Jin Dan cultivators into the intermediate ancient battlefield. Think about it, if many void reversions have to join forces to break through the spatial barrier of the basic ancient battlefield, what sort of cultivation realm would they need to break through the intermediate ancient battlefield's passageway? Chapter 196. Demoness Ji said, of course, if you're considering joining the Fiend's sects, you won't have to worry about such things. Be it at Foundation Establishment or Jin Dan realm, the Fiend's sects have the ability to send you into the ancient battlefield. It all depends on how many opportunities you can obtain inside and whether you can return alive. Su Zimo shook his head and chuckled. Demoness Ji had gone through a lot of trouble to come back and invite him to join the Fiend's sections. When she saw Su Zimo's reaction, she knew the outcome and was not disappointed. Shrugging her shoulders, she said, it's fine. If you change your mind, you can come to the Fiend's sects at any time. Su Zimo nodded. She continued, however, I have to remind you that although there are many opportunities in the ancient battlefield, there are great dangers as well. Some of them come from the ancient battlefield itself, while others come from other cultivators. Although you've defeated the Fiend heirs, you have to know that it was because of the existence of the ancient spirit lock formation that they could not unleash their full strength. Su Zimo was well aware of that. If not for the ancient spirit lock formation, he would not have been a match for the Fiend heirs. According to Su Zimo's conjecture, the fiend heirs, including Demoness G, had unlocked at least 4 spirit meridians. The ancient battlefield is the true clash of the Foundation establishment geniuses of Tianhuang mainland. The world outside of the Great Zhou dynasty is way too vast and there are many unknown places and unknown experts. You might encounter legacy disciples of the 9 immortal sects inside. There are top spirit demons from the 8 demon regions. Most of them are mutated ferocious beasts with extraordinary bloodlines and powerful strength. There are also the 7 fiend sects, 6 Buddhist monasteries, 4 unorthodox groups, 3 aristocratic families and legacy disciples of the various top factions of Tianhuang mainland. All of them are peerless paragons. When he heard that, Su Zimo suddenly frowned. When Demoness G mentioned the 6 Buddhist monasteries and 4 unorthodox groups, she paused for a moment, as though she had reservations. Immortal sects, demons, fiend sects, Buddhist monasteries, unorthodox groups and aristocratic families, each of them sounded like a faction that had a long history. According to the deductions of the 9 immortal sects, the 8 demon regions, and the 7 demonic sects, there should be another sect between the 6 Buddhist monasteries and the 4 unorthodox groups. Right then, Demoness G said, with so many geniuses gathered in the ancient battlefield, less than 30% of them will be able to make it out alive a year later. Su Zimo was shocked. This number was completely beyond his expectations. This meant that more than half of them would die in the primordial battlefield. She looked at Su Zimo and said, to be fair, your melee combat strength is indeed strong. However, given your current strength, your chances of survival in the ancient battlefield are 0. Su Zimo did not refute. He trusted Demoness G's judgment. However, this sentence did not affect Su Zimo's confidence. There were still 3 years until the sect competition. To Su Zimo, there was enough time to raise his strength by a large margin. Right now, Su Zimo had attained greater mastery of the marrow cleansing section. Within 3 years, as long as Su Zimo attained greater mastery of the organs refinement section, he believed that there would not be many people who could match him in melee combat. If he attained greater mastery of orifice clearing, Su Zimo was confident that he could sweep through anyone below Jean Dan in melee combat. In terms of immortality cultivation, Su Zimo was now at mid-stage foundation establishment. With ethereal foundation establishment as his foundation, he should be able to reach perfected foundation establishment within 3 years. After unlocking a few spirit meridians, coupled with secret skills such as his sword formation, fiend suppression seal and blood refinement fiend sutra, Su Zimo might not be able to dominate and suppress geniuses in the ancient battlefield. However, it should not be an issue for him to protect himself. Since you're unwilling to join the fiend sects, I won't bother you here. Demoness G looked at Su Zimo and said with a smile. Su Zimo asked, you're leaving? Yes. Demoness G nodded before turning to look at Su Zimo with a fake smile. Why? You can't bear to part with me? No, I just wanted to say that if you're leaving, hurry up, humph. Demoness G stomped on Su Zimo's foot heavily and raised her chin smugly before turning to leave. Halfway through, she suddenly turned back and declared, hey, if you see my sister, don't tell her that I'm from the fiend sections. That might not be the case. Su Zimo scoffed coldly and turned to leave as well. He had barely taken a few steps when Demoness G's slightly aggrieved voice sounded, if you tell anyone, I'll tell my sister that you bullied me in the coffin. Su Zimo's legs turned to jelly and he nearly fell. That damned lass. Su Zimo's mouth twitched as he cursed internally. Hurry, let's go. Su Zimo waved it off hurriedly without turning back. Demoness G pursed her lips into a smile and her fragrance dissipated with the wind. In the following period of time, Su Zimo was not in a hurry to leave and return to the sect. Instead, he continued to stay in the palace. When he had nothing to do, he would accompany his brother, Su Hong, to drink and chat. It was quite a comfortable life. A month later, Su Zimo was prepared to leave the capital. To be fair, there were few cultivators like Su Zimo who would take the time to return home and spend time with their families. Furthermore, he would be staying for more than a month. Most cultivators would choose to sever their ties with the mortal world right away. It wasn't because they were heartless and cold, but because they knew that this day would come sooner or later. The earlier they severed their ties with the mortal world, it was beneficial for their cultivation. Su Zimo understood that logic as well. However, he could not do it. Before they parted, Su Hong sent Su Zimo out of the city before stopping in his tracks and reminding, "Zimo, if you don't have time, don't rush back. You don't have to worry about me." Even though he said that, there was still a hint of reluctance in the depths of Su Hong's eyes. "I can't help you much. You're alone outside. Take care of yourself." Su Zimo looked at his brother's head of white hair and pursed his lips in silence, feeling terrible. In the cultivation world, the most precious elixirs were those that could increase one's lifespan. There was a price but no supply. After a few decades, they would have to part in life and death. Su Zimo did not dare to think about it. As though he recalled something, Su Hong said hurriedly, "Zimo, if there's a chance, go and see Xiaoning and see if she's doing well in recent years. Xiaoning has a soft personality. Even if she's wronged, she'll probably keep it to herself and not say it out." "All right. There's nothing else." Su Hong's gaze lowered as he murmured softly, "Brother, take care." After a long silence, Su Zimo finally spoke with a slightly hoarse voice. Let's go, let's go." Su Hong turned around and waved his hands. "Second young master, why you take care too?" Uncle Zheng stood on the spot, his voice trembling as tears streamed down his old face. When the Su family was in trouble, Su Zimo and Su Xiaoning were still young and Uncle Zheng had practically raised them bit by bit. In Uncle Zheng's eyes, Su Zimo was his own child. He was already old and did not know if he would be able to see Su Zimo the next time. This might be their final farewell. As though he sensed something, Su Zimo suddenly stopped in his tracks and turned to face Uncle Zheng. Pursing his lips, he knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times solemnly. For years ago, perfected being Tsang Lang's immortal might did not crush that young man's spine or make him bend his knees. 4 years later, Su Zimo knelt down in front of an old man with white hair and beard, kowtowing to bid farewell. Chapter 197. A streak of light flashed across the sky. It streaked across the vast land and passed through the cities and villages. Some mortals looked up instinctively. Those with sharp eyes could vaguely see a green robe. Amidst the clouds, it disappeared before everyone's eyes. Su Zimo did not return to the sect immediately. Instead, he sped in the direction of Tsang Lang mountain range. It had been 2 years since he last saw the dead monkey. Su Zimo still missed it. Besides, there was a cold lake in Tsang Lang mountain range. Back then, Su Zimo was weak. He had only reached the Tendon's transformation section of the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and could not dive to the bottom of the cold lake. Now that Su Zimo had attained greater mastery of the marrow cleansing section and his bloodline was strong, he could attempt to explore the cold lake again. Just as he arrived in the sky above Tsang Lang mountain range, Su Zimo heard a series of roars that shook the forest. It was murderous. This was the roar of a wolf. Su Zimo was very familiar with it. Back when he lived in Tsang Lang mountain range for a year, he spent most of his time fighting with such spirit beasts. Wolves were cunning and vicious. They were extremely intelligent. If not for the help of the spirit monkey back then, Su Zimo would have died in the stomach of a wolf. Su Zimo frowned slightly. It was daytime now. Logically speaking, most spirit beasts would be hibernating. It was the same for wolves. It was rare for there to be such a huge commotion. This should be the wolf pack. Su Zimo murmured softly. Even when he joined forces with the spirit monkey back then, they could only launch a sneak attack. They could not fight the powerful wolf pack head-on. Moreover, After killing a few wolves, it was inevitable that they would be tainted with the aura of the wolf's bloodline. If they could not cover it with other auras in time, they would be tracked down by the wolf pack. Su Zimo ignored the wolf pack. Instead, he headed towards the cave where he used to live. If he wanted to find the spirit monkey, this was the only clue. Otherwise, finding a monkey in the vast Sung Lang mountain range was like finding a needle in a haystack. However, not long after, Su Zimo's eyes flickered. He gradually sensed that something was amiss. The wolf's roar came from the direction of the cave. Was it a coincidence? Su Zimo pondered for a moment, withdrew his flying sword, and descended into the forest. Su Zimo sprinted towards the cave at full speed. At the same time, he looked around with bright eyes, looking for clues on the ground. Before arriving at the cave, Su Zimo had already determined the location based on the various traces left on the ground. The number of wolves this time was huge. There should be more than 10,000 of them. This was an extremely terrifying number. Generally speaking, there would be one spirit demon level wolf in a pack of hundreds of wolves. If there were 10,000 wolves, there would be at least 10 spirit level wolves. The most frightening thing was that the strength of the alpha of the wolf pack could very well be equivalent to a Jin Dan realm spirit demon. There was a huge disparity in the strength of spirit demons. The weakest was equivalent to an early Foundation establishment cultivator. The strongest was equivalent to Daoist Jin Dan. Su Zimo's expression was solemn. When he saw that he was about to reach the cave, he gradually slowed down and quietly moved forward. Soon, a large pack of wolves appeared in front of him. Their eyes shone with a ghastly green glow, bloodthirsty and ferocious. They bared their teeth and saliva dripped from the corners of their mouths onto the ground. They let out deep growls from the depths of their throats. Su Zimo did not move forward rashly. Instead, he came to the side of a huge ancient tree. Using his limbs, he crept up the tree like a spirit ape. Standing at a high spot, Su Zimo looked over and could not help but gasp. There were too many of them. They were densely packed and covered the entire mountain, making one's scalp tingle. If not for the wolf pack surrounding the cave, Su Zimo would definitely choose to retreat and not provoke this pack of demon beasts. However, Su Zimo and the spirit monkey were the only ones who knew about this cave. It was impossible for Su Zimo to leave before confirming the spirit monkey's safety. There were hundreds of wolf corpses at the entrance of the cave. Most of the blood had dried up. Only a few wolf corpses had their skulls smashed and looked like they had died not long ago. Although he was far away, Su Zimo could still see clearly that most of the dead wolves had suffered fatal injuries to their heads. They seemed to have been smashed by blunt objects like rods. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes as he stared at the dark and gloomy entrance of the cave. If he was not wrong, the spirit monkey should be inside. Logically speaking, given the spirit monkey's alertness, it should have fled long ago once this place was exposed. Why would it be trapped here by such a large pack of wolves? Moreover, this pack of wolves was a little strange. They did not swarm forward but chose to wait for a while. Su Zimo did not dare to act rashly. Instead, he hugged the ancient tree and patrolled the pack of wolves. Such a large pack of wolves was disciplined and orderly. There must be a wolf king around. If this wolf king was a Jin Dan realm spirit demon, Su Zimo would definitely not fight it head-on. However, if this wolf king was only a Foundation establishment realm spirit demon, Su Zimo could ride on his flying sword and barge into the pack of wolves. He could go on a killing spree and try to force the wolf king to retreat or even kill it. That was because Su Zimo had an advantage that a Foundation establishment realm spirit demon did not have. Sword Kinesis Flight. As long as Su Zimo could use Sword Kinesis Flight, he would be invincible no matter how many wolves there were. However, if the Wolf King was a Jin Dan realm spirit demon, Su Zimo would not dare to barge in. Be it for humans or demons, core formation was an extremely crucial step. As the saying went, once a Jean Dan was swallowed, one would know that one's fate was no longer in the hands of the heavens. Once a spirit demon formed a core, it would be able to leave the ground and soar into the sky without the help of external objects. This meant that even if the wolves did not have wings, they could fly and Su Zimo's advantage would be gone. Furthermore, Su Zimo was not a match for a Jean Dan realm spirit demon, they were on completely different levels. If the other party was a cultivator who did not cultivate any concealment techniques and their cultivation realms were not too far apart, one could use the spirit peering art to detect the other party's cultivation realm with ease. However, the spirit peering art was useless against spirit demons. That was because there was no spirit energy in the bodies of spirit demons. Before a spirit demon made a move, one could only deduce its cultivation base based on experience, feelings, and observation. At the front of the pack of wolves stood more than 10 taller and stronger wolves. They were ferocious as they paced back and forth, none of the other wolves dared to step forward. Su Zimo nodded to himself. If he was not wrong, those wolves were all Foundation Establishment realm spirit demons. They had a high status in the wolf pack and were similar to the leaders. However, after observing for a while, he realized that none of the wolves looked like true wolf kings. Su Zimo continued searching. All of a sudden, Su Zimo's gaze paused on a towering green rock. A wolf sprawled on the green rock. It was not huge and was about the same height as the many spirit beast level wolves below, there was nothing special about it. However, Su Zimo concluded after pondering for a moment that this was the true wolf king. Among the tens of thousands of wolves, this was the only one that dared to sprawl. Furthermore, it had a lazy expression and its eyes were half closed, as though it was taking a nap. Chapter 198. Just as Su Zimo's gaze landed on the wolf king, it suddenly moved as if it sensed something. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. His gaze was extremely obscure and the dozens of Foundation Establishment wolves did not notice it at all. If this wolf king sensed something, there was an 80% chance that it was a Jean Dan realm spirit demon. Su Zimo observed for a while more. The wolf king merely moved a little and did not do anything else. It did not even open its eyes, as if it was just adjusting its posture to make itself more comfortable. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. Roar! Right then, 5 spirit demon wolves growled and walked towards the entrance of the cave slowly with ferocious expressions. The entrance of the cave was narrow. The 5 wolves did not dare to enter rashly and could only linger at the entrance. Ow ow! Before long, a familiar howl could be heard from the entrance of the cave. It was filled with provocation. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he no longer had any doubts. That was the voice of the spirit monkey. The spirit monkey was very smart. It occupied the terrain and guarded the entrance of the cave so that it could defeat the wolf pack one by one. However, this was only a temporary measure. The spirit monkey had to be constantly on guard against the sneak attacks of the wolf pack and could not relax at all. If this continued, the spirit monkey would not be able to hold on any longer. After all, there were tens of thousands of wolves and the spirit monkey could not hold on alone. Upon hearing the spirit monkey's provocation, the 5 wolves at the entrance of the cave did not fall for it. Instead, they continued to linger at the entrance with a ferocious glint in their eyes. Su Zimo's gaze landed on the wolf king on the green rock again. If this wolf king was a Jean Dan realm spirit demon, the spirit monkey would have died long ago and would not have lasted till now. At the thought of this, Su Zimo no longer hesitated. He put on the mystic gold silk armor and leaped down from the ancient tree. While he was still in mid-air, a flying sword appeared beneath his feet. Swash! A sword beam cut through the air. Su Zimo passed through the dense wolf pack, ignoring the howls of the wolf pack below as he sped towards the entrance of the cave. At the same time, the wolf king on the green rock opened its eyes and narrowed them into long slits. A cunning and ferocious glint danced in its eyes. Whoosh! 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 Su Zimo hovered in midair with a calm expression and clear eyes. With a wave of his sleeve, 6 sword beams flew out from his bag of holding. Hexagonal sword formation. Su Zimo shouted as he controlled the 6 flying swords. They quickly streaked through the air, and the sword chi left behind marks, forming a huge hexagonal sword array. Wang! The light of the formation pattern burst forth, dazzling the eyes. Clang! 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 Su Zimo controlled the gigantic sword formation to envelop the 5 wolves that were wandering at the entrance of the cave. Wherever the sword formation passed, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. Sword chi was like frost, and killing intent filled the air. Roar! One of the wolves did not know how powerful it was. With a ferocious expression, it roared and leaped up. It extended a pair of sharp claws and pounced at the hexagonal sword formation. Clang! 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 The sword formation collided with the wolf claws, producing a crisp sound. Then, blood mist filled the air, and severed limbs flew everywhere. A spirit demon wolf was killed on the spot by the hexagonal sword formation. Damned monkey, come on out. I'll bring you out of this place. Su Zimo shouted loudly as he controlled the hexagonal sword formation to chase after the other 4 wolves. After a short pause, a tall figure suddenly dashed out of the pitch-black cave entrance. It carried a pitch-black rod and its arms were extremely long, almost reaching the ground. When the spirit monkey caught sight of Su Zimo, its monkey eyes widened in joy. Immediately after, the spirit monkey seemed to have thought of something and its joy turned into panic. Ow! Ow! The spirit monkey's fur stood on end as it gestured behind Su Zimo, howling loudly. At the same time, Su Zimo felt a strong sense of danger. His expression changed as he cursed internally. Before he could turn back, an evil gust of wind blew from behind. Right now, Su Zimo was traveling on his sword. If a wolf could appear behind him, there was only one possibility. This wolf was a Jin Dan realm spirit demon and could soar into the air. I've been tricked. Su Zimo recalled the lazy wolf king on the green rock. Back then, when his gaze landed on the wolf king moved slightly. Su Zimo had thought that it was just a coincidence. But now, Su Zimo was enlightened. The wolf king's movement was a subconscious reaction after sensing the aura. But immediately after, the wolf king did not make a sound. It did not even open its eyes, pretending that it did not sense anything and continued to sleep, all so that it could lure him out. This kind of scheming, this kind of cunning, made people's hair stand on end and tremble with fear. A Jin Dan realm spirit demon could crush Su Zimo completely in terms of strength. There was no way he could fight against it. A frighteningly strong aura shrouded over. Su Zimo charged forward with all his might, circulating the mental cultivation technique of petrification. At the same time, he turned the hexagonal sword formation around and blocked behind him. Swoosh! The hexagonal sword formation spun continuously with a bedazzling sword beam. Like a gigantic mirror, it shielded Su Zimo's figure. A look of mockery flashed through the Wolf King's eyes. Stepping into the air, it reached out with a casual claw and slammed it heavily. Its sharp claws sliced across the surface of the sword formation. Bang! There was a deafening sound. The hexagonal sword formation stopped circulating and slammed against Su Zimo's back fiercely. Su Zimo's expression changed starkly as he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood and fell from midair. The sword formation dissipated and cracks appeared on the 6 flying swords. Their lights dimmed and they were crippled. A Jin Dan realm spirit demon had actually destroyed 6 inferior-grade flying swords. How terrifying was that strength? Roar! Standing in midair, the Wolf King suddenly opened its mouth and bared its sinister fangs. Its scarlet tongue let out a deafening roar, causing the ancient trees to shake and rocks to fall. It was awe-inspiring and ferocious. The spirit monkey leaped up and hurriedly caught Su Zimo, who was falling from midair. It was about to turn and enter the cave. But at this moment, the cave behind the spirit monkey had already been sealed by many wolves. The Wolf King looked down at the man and monkey on the ground. Its eyes were filled with contempt and it did not continue attacking. The surrounding wolves started to gather towards the center, layer by layer. Ow! The spirit monkey supported Su Zimo with both hands and stuck its head out, baring its fangs and baring its fangs. Its eyes shone with a bloody light as it let out a threatening roar. Damned monkey, let me down. Right then, Su Zimo spoke in a weak voice. Ga? The spirit monkey was stunned for a moment and hurriedly helped Su Zimo up. Su Zimo flicked his sleeves to wipe away the bloodstains at the corners of his mouth. Taking a deep breath, he swallowed an elixir and adjusted his breathing slowly. His face was slightly pale. The strength of a Jin Dan realm spirit demon was way too strong. Even with the hexagonal sword formation and the mystic gold silk armor, Su Zimo's organs were still shaken violently and almost shifted. It was not hard to imagine that without the hexagonal sword formation and the mystic gold silk armor, Su Zimo would have been smashed into pieces. The man and wolf exchanged glances. The Wolf King raised its head proudly, as if it could not be bothered to attack again. It turned and walked towards the green stone. In the eyes of the Wolf King, Su Zimo would be severely injured even if he did not die from his palm strike. Coupled with the fact that he had lost his flying swords, the man and monkey would definitely die in the face of the wolf pack's attacks. Chapter 199. Su Zimo looked at the Wolf King on the green rock. Enduring the pain from his organs, he racked his brains, thinking of all possible ways to escape. The possibility was minuscule. Firstly, the Wolf King was way too strong. To Su Zimo, it was crushing and destructive, there was almost no possibility of resistance. Secondly, the Wolf King was way too fast. If not for the help of his spirit perception, Su Zimo would have died just now. His only chance of survival was in Su Zimo's blood-bone palm. To this day, Su Zimo still did not know what the blood-bone palm was. However, he knew that the blood-bone palm was indestructible and contained terrifying power. If he could hit the Wolf King's body, there was a high chance that it would be severely injured. Roar! The surrounding Foundation establishment wolves bared their fangs and lowered their heads. Their eyes shone fiercely as they let out a series of howls. Howl, howl. The wolves that covered the mountains and plains howled in unison. The sound was terrifying, and it startled countless birds. Su Zimo took a deep breath and forced a relaxed smile. Damned monkey, we're back to 2 years ago when we fought side by side. Ow, ow. Despite being in the midst of a pack of wolves that could lose its life at any moment, the spirit monkey was not afraid. Instead, it was extremely excited and its eyes were filled with joy. This joy came from the reunion with Su Zimo. Su Zimo could sense the spirit monkey's emotions and could not help but laugh. 2 years ago, we did not dare to fight these beasts head-on. It's a rare opportunity today. Let's kill to our heart's content. Damned monkey, let me see how much you've improved in the past 2 years. Roar. When the spirit monkey heard that, it roared. His bloodline surged within his body and his flesh expanded. The spirit monkey's body expanded and he swung his rod, taking the lead in charging into the pack of wolves. The rod was powerful and shocking. Although the wolf opposite him was also at the Foundation establishment realm, a hint of panic flashed in its eyes. It did not dare to take it head-on and dodged to the side. Poof! The wolves at the back were not so lucky. After being swept by the spirit monkey's rod, many wolves had their brains splattered and died on the spot. Crash! Su Zimo channeled his chi and blood, causing the tides in his body to roar with a frightening momentum. Streaks of azure lightning appeared on the surface of his skin, crackling chaotically and dazzling to the eyes. Crack! Su Zimo then swung his arm, and a pillar of lightning as thick as an arm exploded in the middle of the pack of wolves. Lightning shot out in all directions, and green smoke billowed. Under this terrifying power of thunder, the spirit beast-level wolves were electrocuted to death. The two Foundation Realm wolves were also in a sorry state. Their fur curled up and their bodies trembled. Whoosh! Two other Foundation Establishment wolves pounced from the side. Their sharp claws glinted coldly as they bared their sharp fangs and bit viciously at Su Zimo's neck. If this bite landed, even with Su Zimo's powerful physical body, he would definitely not be able to withstand it. You're courting death. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. With a loud shout, he swung his left arm, drawing a huge arc in the air. Using his fist as a seal, he suddenly dropped down. Bang! The gigantic seal smashed heavily on the head of the wolf and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Without a single sound, the Foundation Establishment wolf fell from midair. On the surface, the wolf looked completely fine without any injuries. However, the inside of its head was already shattered by the tremendous force. At the same time, Su Zimo flipped his right hand and spread his fingers, slamming his palm against the chest of another wolf with a force that could shatter mountains. Sob! The wolf howled tragically and fell. Su Zimo closed in on it. Bang! Instantly, the Foundation Establishment wolf was sent flying and its tendons and bones were broken. Before it landed on the ground, it was already dead. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo killed two Foundation Establishment wolves in a row. His aura surged and he exuded a chilling killing intent, filling the air with a thick stench of blood. The spirit monkey swung his rod, swinging it with a ferocious aura that even water would not be able to penetrate. Piak! 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 The spirit monkey's gaze was ferocious. He was tall and had long arms and immense strength. Any wolf that was struck by his rod would either be injured or die. Behind the spirit monkey, Su Zimo had a calm expression. Even in such a situation, his eyes were still calm and there was no trace of panic. The 6 inferior grade flying swords were shattered by the Jin Dan Realm Wolf King with a single slap. As for the Cold Moon Saber and Sanguine Crystal Bow, they were left in the inheritance ground of the Fiend's sex and he did not have the time to bring them out. Right now, Su Zimo was fighting against the wolves barehanded. Even so, given Su Zimo's physical strength, the wolves were not able to defend against him. Bang! 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 Just a casual punch or kick had the power of a thunderbolt, causing the air to explode. Many wolves pounced forward in a dense pack and were about to drown Su Zimo. However, with a slight pause, the wolves were sent flying and fell to the ground, most likely dead. In the blink of an eye, the ground beneath the feet of the man and monkey was filled with wolf corpses. The killing continued. Out of more than 10 Foundation Establishment wolves, there were only 9 left. The 9 wolves were extremely intelligent. They realized that their strength was not enough to threaten the man and monkey. Therefore, they paced around the periphery, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The wolves were very patient. In their opinion, be it the spirit monkey or the human, there would come a time when their strength would be exhausted. When the man and monkey's strength weakened and they were mentally exhausted, there would definitely be flaws in their defense. At that time, it would be the moment for them to launch a fatal attack. However, as time passed, the 9 wolves were disappointed. The spirit monkey was clearly fatigued. Its strength and speed were not as good as before. However, the flaws revealed by the spirit monkey were all compensated by the terrifying strength of the human. The human seemed to possess endless strength. Up till this point, his eyes were still clear and bright. His battle intent was high and his killing intent was surging. Not only that, he seemed to be getting braver as the battle progressed. The physique of this human was even stronger than theirs. This human was more like a true spirit demon. The wolves did not know that the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness was extremely powerful to begin with. In addition, Su Zimo had cultivated the Void Thunder Manual, the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra and many other secret skills. He had reached the realm where his blood was like tidal waves and his voice was like thunder. His stamina was even more shocking. This pack of wolves could not threaten him at all. Although the wolves were demons, their bloodline was too ordinary. The reason why they could dominate the Tsang Lang mountain range was entirely because of their massive numbers and superior intelligence. If not for the Jin Dan realm Wolf King watching from the side, Su Zimo would have charged out with the spirit monkey a long time ago. Although there were many wolves in the surroundings, they were like clay chickens and pottery dogs in front of Su Zimo. They could not withstand a single blow. Roar! Right then, the Wolf King stood up from the green rock and let out a deafening roar. The Wolf King could no longer sit still. Initially, it thought that since Su Zimo was severely injured, its tribesmen could easily surround and kill the man and monkey. It could even use this opportunity to train the combat strength of the wolf pack. However, as time passed, the Wolf King gradually realized that something was amiss. If this carried on, its tribesmen would suffer too many casualties. The Wolf King decided to attack personally and bite the man and monkey to death cleanly. Pust! 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 Sensing the Wolf King's actions, Su Zimo began to inhale slowly. A huge airflow passed through his throat, letting out a strange sound. The skin around his throat was torn by the airflow and traces of blood seeped out. Su Zimo knew that whether he could survive or not depended on this clash with the Wolf King. Chapter 200. Anaconda Eclipse. It was a secret skill from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness. Su Zimo's chest puffed up at a speed visible to the naked eye in an extremely frightening manner. A scene seemed to flash through the eyes of many wolves. A gigantic anaconda coiled its body, rearing its head to devour the sun and moon. Legs grew beneath its abdomen and 2 horns on its head. It wanted to soar into the air and transform into a dragon. A look of mockery flashed through the eyes of the alpha. No matter what the human before him did, it was all to no avail. The difference between them was too great. Core formation was a complete suppression for Foundation establishment cultivators without any suspense. Since the primordial era, countless monster incarnates have appeared throughout the endless years. However, there were only a handful of geniuses who could kill living beings of core formation at Foundation establishment realm. Every single one of them was a terrifying expert whose name was left behind in history. The Alpha refused to believe that this weak human before it possessed such capabilities. Swoosh! The Alpha leaped and a gust of wind blew over. It was too fast. It was completely beyond Su Zimo's perception. Instinctively, Su Zimo closed his eyes and used his sharp spirit perception to determine the danger and the approximate location of the Alpha. The middle finger and thumb of his left hand interlocked to form a seal and the image of a fiend subduing appeared in his mind. Pressing forward, he hollered, "Kill!" Anaconda Eclipse combined with Thunderclap Kill and Fiend Suppression Seal burst forth instantly. In the process of fighting against the wolf pack, Su Zimo did not use those 3 trump cards the entire time, nor did he waste any spirit energy. It was all for this moment. However, those 3 trump cards were only used to confuse and obstruct the Alpha for a moment. Even if it was only for a split second. Su Zimo's true killing move was on his right hand. Swash! Su Zimo used his right hand as a saber and stabbed forward. All 4 trump cards were used. The first to descend were Anaconda Eclipse and Thunderclap Kill. A deafening roar burst forth with the power of thunder, as though it wanted to topple the stars and shatter the world. The surrounding blue wolves revealed a trace of pain and subconsciously retreated. However, the Alpha that was facing Thunderclap Kill did not pause in its actions at all. Suddenly, a scarlet air current burst forth from the Alpha's chest and coiled around him. Accompanied by the sound of his bloodline circulating, the Alpha's aura rose by a level. The might of core formation descended and demonic chi permeated the air in a soul-stirring manner. The alpha reached out with its claws and grabbed forward, shattering the golden palm seal that was descending from midair with ease. The Wolf King did not stop there and bit towards Su Zimo's neck with a ferocious expression. Right then, Su Zimo's right hand slashed over. The moment the Wolf King bit Su Zimo's neck, Su Zimo's right hand poked the Wolf King's body. Su Zimo's bodies, Su Zimo, chi. Eclipse SS's was, Wolf SS was, however, the alpha was suspicious and cunning by nature and would definitely not take risks. Against Su Zimo's right hand, the alpha stopped in its tracks and swiped forward with its claws. The moment it made contact with Su Zimo's chest, it retreated in a flash. Bang! As though he was struck by lightning, Su Zimo fell backward uncontrollably with a pale face. The attack missed. The alpha was too fast and cautious. Not only did it avoid Su Zimo's right hand, it even seized the opportunity to severely injure the latter. Initially, it wanted to rip apart Su Zimo's stomach, but it was blocked by the mystic gold silk armor. The mystic gold silk armor was a broken Khanate spirit weapon after all. Even though it could defend against the sharpness of the wolf's claws, it could not defend against the power contained within. That gentle swipe without using its full strength had already caused a few bones in Su Zimo's chest to break. Even his organs were shaken violently and cracks appeared on the surface. Su Zimo coughed out fresh blood and sighed internally as he looked at the alpha that was closing in on him. There's no more chance. Even when the alpha was caught off guard, he did not succeed. But now, Su Zimo was severely injured and had lost his combat strength. There was no longer any chance for him to kill the alpha. If I were to attain greater mastery of the organs refinement section, my overall strength would rise significantly. Be it in terms of strength or reaction speed, there would be an increase. If I were to use just now, I might have a chance to kill him. It's just a pity. It was not that the plan did not work, but the difference in strength between the two parties was too great. The strength of a spirit demon that had formed a core was far beyond Su Zimo's imagination. On the other side, the spirit monkey was covered in injuries and fell to the ground. Its long rod was tossed aside and it was panting, it was exhausted as well. The alpha walked towards the man and monkey slowly, as though it was the ruler of the world. It stared at Su Zimo's right hand with a hint of scrutiny, doubt and curiosity. What was it that could cause it to feel fear? Was it a hallucination? After the alpha decided to bite Su Zimo to death, it would take a look at what this human's right hand was. Howl howl. The surrounding wolves howled into the skies with excited expressions, waiting for the final kill. The alpha strode over and stuck its massive head in front of Su Zimo. A nauseating stench came out of its mouth and nose and the sticky saliva in its mouth dripped onto Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo no longer had the strength to resist and merely glared at the alpha coldly. The alpha's face was filled with disdain as it opened its massive mouth and bared its fangs. Just as it was about to bite down, its expression changed starkly and the ferocity in its eyes turned into fear. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. Before he had time to react, he felt a tyrannical wave of energy coming out from the cave behind him, suddenly bursting out. For a moment, Su Zimo had an illusion. The entire world seemed to have come to a standstill. The world was filled with a murderous aura and the atmosphere was stifling. It was so silent that one could even hear a pin drop. It was as though all living beings were choked by an invisible force and could not make a sound. The energy fluctuation was extremely unfamiliar and Su Zimo had never seen it before. It did not seem like a spirit art but it was extremely terrifying. Poof! There was a crisp sound. Right in front of countless gazes, the Wolf King's head that was inches away from Su Zimo suddenly exploded as though it was struck by a strange force. A blood mist spread and splattered onto Su Zimo's body. Su Zimo's body stiffened as he looked at the scene in disbelief. He could barely smell the incomparably smelly blood on his body. The spirit monkey was also stunned and froze on the spot. The powerful Jin Dan Realm Wolf King was able to suppress Su Zimo completely. However, it was killed instantly by this energy fluctuation without any resistance. How hard was the head of the Jin Dan Realm Wolf King? Even if Su Zimo wielded the cold moon saber and slashed with all his might, he would not be able to leave a single mark on its head. But now, such a hard head had exploded right in front of Su Zimo's eyes. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Su Zimo would not have been able to imagine it. The impact of this scene on him was way too great. It was only when the headless corpse of the Alpha fell heavily in front of Su Zimo that he snapped out of his stupor and heaved a long sigh of relief. After a short period of silence, the remaining thousands of wolves whimpered, drooped their tails, and fled into the distance without looking back. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared completely, leaving behind only wolf corpses and bloodstains.